Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is blessed by Soul Reaper. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Intimidator1323 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Prologue: Death is only the beginning. It began, as many stories do, with a single person and a single defining moment. A moment in which the person in question is set on the path upon which they will travel to greatness. On this path, choices are made, heroes and villains are born, and destinies are fulfilled. In this case, that single person is Naruto Uzumaki, and that defining moment is death. Our story begins 11 years after the great, monstrous fox, known as the Kyuubi no Yoko, suddenly appeared in the tranquil yet powerful village of Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves. When it appeared, the beast tore through the village defenses and slaughtered hundreds, civilian and shinobi alike. None could stand against the sheer power it wielded. Even Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, a man who once destroyed an entire army with a single attack, was no match for the giant fox. It seemed that Konoha was well and truly doomed to be nothing more than a crater in the ground filled with the memories of its fallen people. And then, when all hope seemed lost, the Yondaime summoned a being whose power makes the Kyuubi seem like dust beneath one's fingernails. The Shinigami, Death himself. Minato Namikaze made a deal with the omnipotent being, his soul in exchange for sealing the Kyuubi away. With this, a pact was made and the death god subdued the creature, allowing the mortal Hokage to seal it away into the body of a newborn child, a boy named Naruto Uzumaki. Minato knew that nearly everyone in Konoha had lost a friend, family member, or loved one at the paws of the rampaging fox, and was well aware that the villagers would see the newborn as the Kyuubi reincarnated. A foolish notion, yes, but humans are naive and superstitious creatures that tend to fear and despise what they do not understand. The Yondaime knew that the possibility of the villagers developing a deep, irrational hatred of the infant was very real indeed. And so, with his dying breath, he begged his people to honor the child as a hero, as the one whose very life kept the Kyuubi imprisoned and kept them all safe. Thus, with these final words, he died. The Shinigami took his soul and retreated from the world of the living. The pact was complete. Despite being practically worshipped by his people, the Yondaime's dying wish was ignored by the majority of the people of Konoha. Most called for the infant's death the moment his link to the fox was revealed. On that day, honor and reverence were replaced with spite and hatred. For just as humanity is capable of great compassion, so too are they capable of unspeakable cruelty. In the 11 years since, the people of Konoha would do anything in their power to inflict excruciating pain, physical or otherwise, upon the young boy. Most days they would form mobs with both civilian and shinobi alike and chase him down and beat him within an inch of his life. Other days they would stab, burn, drown, and once, even attempted to bury him alive, telling him it was the closest thing to a proper funeral he would ever receive. Aside from the physical torment, the villagers found other ways to torment young Naruto. Most of these involved denying him the basic needs of survival: food, water, and shelter. The food and drink he did receive, mostly as anonymous gifts, were often spoiled or poisoned. Despite the numerous attempts on his life, Naruto survived because of the Kyuubi sealed within him. It didn't want to die any more than its prison did, so it healed his wounds and purged any poison within his body. The Sandaime Hokage, Minato's predecessor who had retaken the position of Hokage after the latter's death, did everything within his power to give the boy the normal life he deserved, but one man, even one known as the god of shinobi, could only do so much. But despite this, Naruto was able to make a few friends outside of the Sandaime. Irika Yumino, the man who served as Naruto's elder brother figure and mentor, had lost his parents to the Kyuubi when it attacked. Despite this, he was wise enough to realize that Naruto and the fox were not one and the same. Irika served as a protector when he could and a friend always. Tuchi and Aya Michiraku. The father and daughter pair owned a small ramen stand called the Chiraku Ramen, and was the only place that Naruto could eat at because the two would not spoil or poison his food. Tuchi saw in the boy the son he never knew he wanted and Ayam a little brother to dote upon. Sadly, any attempt to incorporate Naruto into their family was thwarted by the civilian and advisor sides of the village's council. A corrupted cabal filled with liars and greed, they were among Naruto's most outspoken critics. Naruto did not have many friends his own age thanks to the parents of those who were of his age group. The Sandaime knew those who were alive during the Kyuubi attack would be unlikely to ever overcome their hatred. Because of this, he created a law stating that anyone who told the younger generation of Naruto's connection to Kyuubi would be immediately executed without a trial. The elder Hokage believed that this would allow Naruto to make friends with those of his generation free of the corrupting influence of their parents. Yet, despite this law, children are gullible and easy to manipulate. When their parents told them to hate Naruto, they did so without question. And why would they question their parents? Those who gave them life and provided for them were surely infallible in their judgment, right? If only that were true. It was mostly the civilian children who were encouraged to hate Naruto. Those who were born in clans, however, merely avoided all contact with him. They knew they would be alienated for their friendship with Naruto by the other children, and so evaded the blonde boy who everyone hated but wouldn't explain why. Despite this, Naruto did have one friend his age, one child who did not care if she was ostracized for her friendship with the young Uzumaki. Hinata Hyuga. She was the daughter of the head of one of the oldest and most revered clans in Konoha, those who carried the all-seeing eyes, the Hyuga clan. Most of the clan disliked Hinata for her gentle and kind nature, something that was an anathema to the strong and stoic clan, but she didn't care what they thought. She followed her heart and became Naruto's closest friend. For 11 years life was harsh for Naruto with only a few people to provide him a shining light in the darkness of his existence. But that changed on this day. On the day of his birth, the day of the celebration of the Kyuubi's defeat, Naruto once again found himself being chased by a mob of angry villagers, this time accompanied by a squad of ANBU. On some days he would escape. On others he would be caught and beaten to within an inch of his life. Today, however, although he would be caught, his attackers would go too far. Today, the defining moment of Naruto Uzumaki's young life would occur. Today, Naruto Uzumaki would die. With Naruto. He had been running for hours now. Normally the mobs would give up after the first hour or so, even on his birthday, but today the mob was being led by a squad of ANBU. This seemed to give the crowd the incentive they needed to keep going. After the third hour of running and dodging various thrown weapons, the leader of the ANBU squad finally got lucky and managed to hit Naruto in the leg with a kunai. Naruto had cried out in pain as he stumbled and fell forward. The crowd had finally caught up to him and began their usual beating/kicking/stabbing session. After a good 20 minutes of this, the crowd parted, encircling Naruto's body while the ANBU leader approached him, staring down at him murderously through his bare mask, a katana in his hand. By this point Naruto was barely capable of breathing, much less moving. He could only gaze up at the man who led the attack against him. The man kneeled down and looked the boy in his eyes. "Hello, Kyuubi," he sneered. "Do you remember me?" Naruto didn't answer. Couldn't answer. He was too tired to speak. Too tired to care. The ANBU continued after he received no answer. "I'm not surprised. Mere mortals like me are beneath you after all." "Oh wait, you're beneath me now, aren't you?" Naruto just stared tiredly. "Let me remind you then. When you attacked the village all those years ago, I launched a fire jutsu that hit you right in your ugly face," he continued, with the boy on the ground not knowing what in the nine hells he was talking about. "You barely flinched, glared at me, and roared. Sent me flying straight through a damn building. I hit the ground, unable to move, both my legs broken. I look around and see corpses everywhere. I keep trying to move when I look at the body right next to me. Guess who it was?" Naruto didn't answer. The ANBU growled at him, mistaking the tired look for one of apathy. He raised his katana and impaled Naruto with it, making sure not to hit anything vital. Naruto cried out in pain as the masked man continued. "It was my wife," he yelled, "the woman I pledged myself to. The woman I promised to protect with my dying breath. And she was dead," he shouted before calming himself. "I must have passed out, because I woke up in a hospital bed, hoping to God that what I saw was a terrible nightmare. But it wasn't. One of the doctors told me she was dead." He then twisted the blade slowly, causing the blonde boy even more pain. "Because of you. You murdered her, and that stupid old man let you get away with it." He then grinned evilly behind his mask, but not anymore. He pulled out a kunai and held it to the boy's throat, leaving the katana still impaled in him. "The old man isn't here now, and I put a poison in my fellow ANBU's food so they would sleep and be unable to protect you. No one is going to save you this time." He continued to grin while the crowd cheered him on. "This is for my wife, may she finally rest in peace." And with that, he slit the boy's throat. Naruto's eyes widened as he began choking on his own blood, trying desperately to draw breath. "No!" Suddenly another ANBU appeared, this one wearing a dog mask. He kicked the bare-masked ANBU in the side of the head, launching him into a building, and rendering him unconscious. The ANBU didn't even pay attention to the rest of the crowd as he kneeled next to Naruto and began cradling him in his arms. "Naruto! Naruto, look at me! You're going to be alright. Just stay with me." The crowd was confused by this and then worried. If this ANBU was able to save the Kyuubi, all their efforts would be for nothing. "Step away from the Kyuubi, dog," one of the other ANBU in the crowd ordered, calling the man by his code name. "Fuck you," dog growled, glaring at him while not letting go of the dying child in his arms. The ANBU snarled behind his mask. "I said step away." The man took a menacing step forwards, only to stop when three figures appeared before him. Two of them were ANBU, who were intimidating enough by themselves, but the old man they were with was what really scared him and the rest of the crowd. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage and the legendary god of shinobi, who was currently glaring bloody murder at the Anbu in front of him. Said Anbu took several fearful steps back. Hokage-sama, he stuttered in sheer terror. The old Kage continued to glare at him. You fools, he said in a menacing tone before shouting, do you realize what you've just done? The crowd was terrified now. The amount of killing intent being released by the Sandaime was enough to bring them to their knees. We just killed the KKQB, the fearful masked shinobi stuttered out. The killing intent increased. No, you just killed Naruto Uzumaki. You just killed the son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. You just killed the Yandaime's son. Everyone present, except for Dog and the two Anbu that accompanied the Hokage, were shocked out of their skins. It couldn't be. It wasn't possible. He only looked like the Yandaime to mock their hero's sacrifice. No, the Anbu said, trembling and unbelieving, no, it can't be, that's not possible. The rest of the crowd was in the same position, trying to find a way to not believe what they were hearing. The old Hokage continued to glare. But it is. You just killed Minato's legacy, and now, he said as he discarded his Hokage robes and hat, revealing the battle armor underneath. I'm going to kill you! He cried as he attacked. The crowd was slaughtered, butchered, incinerated, and crushed by the old Kage's assault. They were so frozen in fear that they couldn't do anything but scream. Some begged for mercy, clinging to their lives and claiming that the QB deserved to die. They were ignored. When it was over, the street was covered in blood and gore not seen since the Uchiha clan massacre years prior. The Sandaime was panting and trembling in rage while still exuding killing intent powerful enough to be felt by the whole village. One of the Anbu that accompanied the Hokage, this one wearing a cat mask, took a few careful steps towards her leader and placed a careful hand on his shoulder. Hokage-sama, stop. You did it, they're dead. The old man flinched at her touch, still in battle mode before finally calming down. Then he remembered Naruto. He said as he quickly moved to where Dog and Naruto were. We need to get him to a hospital, quickly. With the QB inside of him, there might still be time to dash. No, Dog said quietly, interrupting. The Sandaime looked at his subordinate. What? Dog looked up at his leader, tears welling up in his eyes behind his mask. He's dead. The Sandaime froze as he felt his heart stop at hearing Theseus' words. He looked down at the cradle boy and saw that his face was frozen in shock. His eyes were still open, but there was no life in them. Naruto Uzumaki was truly dead. The group simply stared in disbelief as Dog closed the deceased boy's eyes with one of his hands before slowly lowering him to the ground and then standing up, Naruto's blood covering his torso. He then noticed something out of the corner of his eye. He looked over and saw the bare-masked Anbu, still unconscious. Still alive. Growling, Dog pulled out a kunai from a pouch on his belt and began marching towards the downed Anbu. Kakashi, the Sandaime said as he saw the man move towards his former comrade. Kakashi kneeled next to Bear and grabbed him by the collar and pulled him up while placing the knife at his throat. Kakashi, stop. The Sandaime ordered the dog-masked Anbu. Kakashi froze. Why? He asked. This animal murdered Naruto. He deserves nothing less. He deserves much more, the old man said. He must stand trial for what he did. He will spend the rest of his life in the deepest, darkest cell we have, he promised. But death is too good for him. Kakashi said nothing for a few moments before punching the unconscious man and dropping him before standing up. You're right, he said quietly, still glaring at the downed Anbu. Death isn't enough. The Sandaime nodded before looking the two Anbu that arrived with him. Cat, Hawk. Take Bear to Ibiki. Tell him to come up with the worst torture he can possibly think of, and then tell him to find something even worse to use on him. The two Anbu bowed before picking up the unconscious Bear and heading towards the interrogation and torture department. The Sandaime then looked at Kakashi. Pick up Naruto, Kakashi. We're going to prepare a proper funeral for him. Kakashi was confused. Proper funeral? He asked, not understanding what he meant. The old Hokage nodded. I'm going to make an announcement to the entire village. They will know that they have hated and tortured the son of their greatest heroes. They will spend the rest of their lives knowing what they have done. Kakashi nodded and moved towards Naruto's body. He gently began lifting Naruto up. That was when something strange happened. As Kakashi was lifting him up, Naruto's body crumbled into dust. Both of their eyes widened. What? Kakashi stuttered, shocked. What just happened? The Sandaime was just as shocked as he was. I don't know, he answered truthfully. The two could only stare at the dust in Kakashi's hands and on the ground. Elsewhere, after Naruto's death, Naruto Uzumaki's day had taken a turn from worse to just plain bizarre. He remembered being chased down by a group of angry villagers, being caught, hearing the bare-masked Anbu call him Kyubi while droning on and on and on about his dead wife, then being stabbed, and finally, having his throat slashed open, gagging on his own blood, and blacking out. And now, a few minutes later, he awakens to find himself able to breathe, on the same street he was caught. Naruto groaned as he stood up and looked around. Something was different. The first thing he noticed was that all of the villagers surrounding him were gone, including the Anbu. Another difference was that everything was shrouded in a strange light. A mixture of orange and gold, like what one would find as the sun was setting. Something was very wrong. As he took a step forward, he felt a sharp pain in his gut. He looked down and gasped. The katana he was stabbed with was still in him. And yet, despite this, he wasn't bleeding, nor did he feel himself dying. It was official now, something was definitely wrong. And it was about to get worse. As he was about to attempt to remove the katana, an ink-like, shadowy substance appeared on the ground in front of him and a figure slowly rose from it. It was tall, at least 3 times his height, and wearing a cloak with an attached hood. The cloak was mostly open, exposing a great deal of its ribcage with a veil of rotting flesh around it. 2 threads lined with beads that looked like golden skulls encircled its waist. Its hands were a sickly gray with a golden bracelet wrapped around both of its wrists. The hood seemed to be too tall and too wide for the wearer, leaving it to sag across its head. Its face was still visible, though, and what a face it was! It appeared to be the rotting face of a corpse, sunken and gray like the rest of its body, with no nose and black eyes that shone with malice. 2 slightly curved horns were protruding horizontally from holes in its hood. It had no visible legs and appeared to be hovering above the ground, propelled by some unseen force. In its left hand it carried a wicked-looking scythe even taller than its wielder. The hilt of the weapon appeared to be made of a giant human spine with a small glaive at the very bottom tip. This glaive was dwarfed by the curved, main blade at the top. The piece that connected the blade to the hilt was covered on both sides by a demonic skull design, with horns coming out of its head and face and a mouth full of razor-sharp fangs. Across of both sides of the blade were several grooves that seemed to sink into it, giving the weapon an even more intimidating look. All in all, this thing and its weapon were the most terrifying things Naruto had ever seen in his young life. The hooded corpse seemed to be glaring at the blonde boy. And then it spoke. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto jumped slightly at the creature's voice. It was rasping with a dark undertone. The corpse continued to speak, "Your fate is decided, everlasting damnation for your sins." This shocked Naruto. He suddenly realized what this thing was. The Shinigami. That meant he was dead. Naruto also understood what it was saying. He might not have been the smartest of his age group, but he knew what the death god had planned for him. But I didn't do anything wrong," he said with fear in his voice. Did he only barely notice the ground breaking apart in large chunks and floating away, revealing a dark, swirling sky. They seemed to be in a tunnel, floating towards a white light at the end. The Shinigami seemed to scoff at him. "Your very existence is a stain on the natural order. The fact that you live is enough to deserve damnation." Naruto's eyes widened. Then it was true, the villagers had called him a monster and demon for years, and now he knew why, because he truly was one. The Reaper then held out its hand. "Come, face eternity. Soon you will be joined by those whose lives you have ruined, whose souls you have damned, the innocent you have corrupted, seduced into becoming your friends." Naruto's eyes widened. "Iruka-sensei, Tuchi, I am Nichin, Aji-san, Hinata-chan." The death god intended to damn them as well. Naruto had lived a cursed life, a life of pain and torture. His loved ones were his only source of happiness, his light in the darkness. They had saved his life and his sanity. He could care less about what happens to himself, but he would not let anything happen to his precious people. Naruto glared at the Reaper. "I don't care what happens to me, but you won't touch those dear to me." He then looked down at the katana embedded within him. He gripped the hilt with his hands and pulled as hard as he could. The blade was removed with a sickening sucking sound and Naruto grit his teeth from the immense pain he was in. He then held the weapon in a stance he had seen an Anbu use while training. "I'll kill you first," he declared. He knew he had absolutely no chance against this thing. He was literally facing down death himself, but he had to try. The Shinigami scoffed. "Pretending to possess compassion will not save you, creature. Your black soul is mine." He then held his scythe in his hands and took a stance. The two glared at one another for a few moments, and then charged. Naruto swung at the Reaper's midsection only for him to disappear and reappear behind his attacker. Death swung the bottom, glaive end of the scythe and left a nasty slash across Naruto's back. The boy cried out in pain and stumbled forward. The Shinigami only laughed. "You have no skill, and even if you did, I cannot be defeated here," he mock-bragged. Naruto glared and snarled. "We'll see," he said and lunged again. Death easily blocked a clumsy attack aimed at his stomach and then another before backhanding the boy across the platform. Accept your fate. Let me take you. Never. Death then surprised his foe by throwing his scythe at him. Naruto quickly rolled to the side, barely dodging the spinning weapon. Blade then reversed and flew back to its owner. Naruto was unable to dodge in time as the hilt smacked him in the chest, knocking him down and knocking the wind out of him. Death caught his own weapon and jumped into the air, aiming to bring the scythe down on his downed prey. Naruto caught his breath just in time to roll out of the way, ending up behind the Reaper. Without hesitating, Naruto slashed at the creature's unprotected back. Death let out a cry of pain and turned, backhanding Naruto again and sending him flying. As he landed, Death teleported in front of him and swung his blade down diagonally. Naruto instinctively held his blade and miraculously blocked it. What? Death gasped. How was this possible? His weapon should have sliced right through the human-made weapon in this realm. Naruto took advantage of his foe's shock and slashed at Death's stomach before jumping out of the way. Death shrieked in pain and swung his scythe horizontally at the blonde boy. If he hadn't jumped back, Naruto would have been beheaded. Death then unleashed a flurry of attacks, with Naruto barely able to block each one. Finally, though, Death landed a blow that knocked the katana right out of Naruto's hand. Before he could do anything, Death wrapped an unarmed rotten hand around Naruto's throat and pulled him up to eye level. You have failed, demon. Now you will be judged, and your defiance will only inflict even more pain on those you have tainted. Their suffering will be legendary, as will yours, Death proclaimed. Naruto was feeling a mix between fear and rage before. Now, however, he was feeling nothing but rage. A pure, endless, all-consuming fury that had engulfed his very being. Death raised his blade. Now, face your sins. Before Death could finish off Naruto, something amazing happened. Naruto instinctually reached for his fallen blade, on the other side of the platform, practically willing it to come to him. And it did! The blade shuddered for a second before flying straight towards Naruto, hilt first. Naruto caught the blade just as the Reaper was beginning to bring his scythe down on Naruto's neck. Without hesitation, he plunged the katana into Death's shoulder, a torrent of shadowy smoke pouring from the wound. The Shinigami let out a world-shaking scream of pain before letting go of both his victim and his weapon, reaching for the embedded sword in his shoulder. As Naruto hit the ground, he immediately reached for the scythe, picked it up, and charged at the wounded god. Death saw Naruto charging him with his own weapon just as he removed the blade from his shoulder and held out his hand, trying to summon his weapon back to him. To his extreme surprise and utter misfortune, the scythe ignored his call. What? That was all he could say before his foe was upon him. Naruto slashed down diagonally, leaving a deep wound across the Reaper's chest. Death barely had time to cry out before Naruto swung the blade horizontally, carving an equally deep wound across his stomach. The blonde then pulled his arm back and stabbed his new weapon forward. To his slight surprise, the curved blade swung forward, transforming the scythe into a spear. The blade plunged into the Shinigami's chest and impaled him out through his back. Naruto then pulled the blade out and impaled him again and again. He continued this 7 times before pulling back and stabbing as hard as he possibly could. With incredible strength, the Reaper was launched off of the blade and sent flying across the platform. Death rolled for a bit as he landed and shakily got to his feet, surprise apparent across his undead face. Impossible! He cried out as he tried again to summon his weapon, but it didn't leave the boy's hands. His own scythe had rejected him. Naruto looked down at his new weapon before swinging lightly. The blade then rotated forward, transforming the spear into a scythe once more. He then twirled the weapon and held it like an expert. Despite it being over twice his size and having never used a scythe, or any other weapon, before, he was wielding it like an expert. Death stared in shock at his young foe. Naruto was covered in a dark red aura, his eyes were red and slitted, and the canines he had been born with had grown sharper and more pronounced. He looked like a demon out of someone's worst nightmares. And he no longer looked afraid. No, now it was Death's turn to be afraid. How is this possible? How are you using Harvest? How are you able to fight me here? This is my realm. I am invincible here, he demanded and declared. Naruto growled and charged forwards with murder in his eyes. Death backed away. No! Back away! Stay away from me! He shouted fearfully. Naruto didn't listen, unleashing slash after slash against the Reaper, with the creature unable to fight back, only shriek in pain. Finally, Naruto swung the blade upward, slashing Death's face and producing another scream from the Reaper of Souls. Naruto then spun around and stabbed the blade horizontally into his foe's chest. He then lifted his foe into the air and, with incredible strength, slammed him into the ground, knocking the non-existent breath out of him. He then painfully yanked the blade out and kicked the downed Death God across the platform. Death weakly got to his feet, barely able to move from the intense pain he was in. He rose to his feet, and rose up just in time to see Naruto leap into the air. With a mighty war cry, the blonde brought the blade down on Death's right shoulder, severing it and spraying shadowy blood everywhere. The Shinigami let out a scream of agony so loud that it nearly made Naruto's ears bleed. But he fought through the pain and held the blade to the Death God's throat. Death had fallen to his knees, clutching where his arm had been separated from him. He saw said appendage lying on the ground nearby. Before he could even move in its direction, the arm dissolved into shadow and Death found his own side being held at his throat. He looked at his young foe, eyes filled with sheer terror. What are you?" he rasped weakly. Naruto glared at him. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. But for you? I'm Death," he declared. The Reaper was trembling now. "Master," he called out in a begging tone, looking around rapidly, "help me." Naruto paused. "Master? Who would Death call master?" That answer was given in the form of a single word. "Why?" a new voice asked, a voice that was raspy like Death's but was also softer yet carried more authority and power. Naruto spun around and froze at what he saw. Floating a few meters above the ground before him was another creature, this one even more terrifying than the first. It towered over Death, with a demonic face and glowing golden eyes. Its skin was a darkish blue-gray color. It had long shaggy white hair and 2 red horns protruding from its head. It was clothed in flowing white robes. Its arms were unnaturally thin and its fingers were long and ended in claw-like nails. Naruto was shocked enough to allow the Kyuubi's power to recede. He recognized this being from stories and pictures he had heard and seen. The Shinigami. And he was glaring at the Shinigami? Wait, what? The hooded Reaper gazed up at the horned one. "Shinigami-sama," he said, lowering his head, before continuing, "thank the Creator you're here. Quickly, destroy the monster before it escapes." Now Naruto was even more confused. If this horned being was the Shinigami, what the hell had he been fighting? The Shinigami snarled, "You are in no position to demand anything of me. You came here against my wishes, Omen, and you broke your oath to the cause, to me," he shouted. The hooded Reaper, now known as Omen, cringed. "But master," he pleaded, "I was only here to serve the cause. To protect mankind against the dark forces who seek to destroy and corrupt them." The Shinigami then swooped down on the wounded Omen and roared directly in his face, revealing a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. Omen shrank into himself at the enraged display. "You dare lie to me, you deceitful little worm?" he demanded. "You did not come here to serve the cause. You came here to settle your petty vendetta against demonkind. They are monsters. A threat to the balance," Omen said, defending his actions. "Demons may be," the Shinigami conceded, "but you know as well as I that the Jinchuriki are not demons, nor are they a threat, unless they choose to be. Even then, it is not our business to involve ourselves in humanity's affairs. We are their silent guardians. We protect them, watch over them, and they do not know about us." Omen seemed to grow angry. "And yet we let these," he gestures to Naruto, "monsters run around without oversight? We let the humans control them? The Kyuubi nearly annihilated one of the most powerful human settlements until your intervention stopped it. How long until it escapes again and finishes the task?" he demanded. Naruto was really confused now. What the hell was a Jinchuriki? And what did he and the Shinigami have to do with the Kyuubi? The Shinigami growled at his servant's defiance. "Minato Namikaze invoked the pact. I must appear when the pact is called. The Jinchuriki are not a threat, either are the Biju they contain. They all agreed long ago to respect the balance, and not to involve themselves." "But they did," Omen argued. "Because they were forced. A handful of greedy human leaders subdued them and sealed them into innocent children. Humans are weak. They cannot handle that kind of power. All it takes is a single mistake to unleash total destruction upon the world. The only way to stop the threat is to permanently silence the Biju when they are vulnerable. That is not your decision to make." The Shinigami snarled, "I did not create the Reaper Corp to control humanity or decide its future. I created it to protect them from destruction. When mankind chooses, they choose only what makes themselves stronger, not what makes things right. They cannot be trusted to make their own decisions. Have you forgotten Kagaya and the Shinju?" "I have forgotten nothing. Do not think you can lecture me on events that happened before you were born, boy. Humanity can only achieve its full potential if it is not affected by an outside source. That is what the Creator said, and I agree with him completely." "Then you are a fool." Omen widened his eyes at what he just said. "And master, I didn't mean dash," he attempted to explain. "No," the Shinigami interrupted, "you meant every word and you're right. I am a fool," he then backhanded Omen, the blow somehow more painful than all the wounds he had received combined, "for believing you would not let your past life affect your judgment." He then finally turned to Naruto, who had been silent throughout the entire supernatural shouting match. Naruto Uzumaki said. Boy jumped at the mention of his name. I apologize for Omen's actions. He then glared at the fallen Reaper who cowered under his gaze. Clearly, I made a mistake when I recruited him. Naruto was about to speak when the Shinigami spoke again. He has disobeyed my orders and threatened the innocent. Threats he no doubt would have acted upon if given the choice. He looked back at the blonde boy. Kill him. Naruto and Omen's eyes widened. What? What? He tried to reap your soul simply because he hates what you carry within you, the Shinigami explained. He was going to kill your loved one simply for being connected to you. He has abused the power I have given him and has misused it for his own purposes. He has broken his oath. For that he must die. Naruto then remembered what Omen had said he was going to do to his precious people. He glared at the wounded Reaper and marched towards him with harvest in his hands. He then raised it above his head. Omen's eyes widened. No! He begged, please don't dash. Naruto brought the blade down, slicing the Reaper vertically in half. The two halves fell to the ground and dissolved into shadow. It is done, the Shinigami stated simply. Naruto merely looked down at where his fallen foe had been kneeling before dropping harvest, falling to his hands and knees, and vomiting. The Shinigami simply watched. He should have realized that this would happen. After all, the boy did just make his first kill. Naruto gasped for breath and was trembling. What have I done? He had just killed someone. Whatever. Even if he had threatened his precious people, that didn't justify killing him. Did it? What needed to be done, the Shinigami answered. He was a threat to humanity, to those you care for. Sparing him would only have fueled his desire for revenge. Naruto simply stared at the ground with a blank look on his face. He stayed that way for several moments before picking up harvest and standing. Feeling better? Naruto nodded. Yeah. Thank you, Shinigami-sama, he said, bowing. The death god smiled. You are most welcome. It's the least I could do after being unable to stop your premature death. Naruto was confused. Premature? He repeated. Oh, right. I forgot to tell you. You weren't supposed to die today, the Shinigami explained. Naruto was confused. I wasn't supposed to die? He asked. The Shinigami nodded. Indeed. Omen manipulated a naive dead counter into ending your life far earlier than it was supposed to. A what? Naruto asked. A dead counter. They are responsible for tracking all living souls and making sure they die at the correct time. Then a Reaper comes and collects the deceased person's soul and brings it to me, where I determine which afterlife they are sent to, he explained. Naruto was confused. But you're the Shinigami. Don't you decide when someone dies? Don't you collect their souls? The Shinigami chuckled. Firstly, I prefer to be called death, and secondly, no mortal. The creator decides when someone is born and when they die. I merely collect on the death half of the equation. Besides, do you know how many people die every day? Even I can't do all the work myself. Naruto nodded. It did sound like a difficult job. He then remembered something. Who's the creator? He asked. Death chuckled again. Exactly what his title says. He is the maker of all things, the being who created the heavens, the earth, and everywhere in between, he explained. To humanity, he goes by many different names, God, Kami, Allah, etc., etc. But to everyone else, he is simply called by his title, the Creator. Naruto noticed a hint of compassion in his tone. You sound like you're close to him. Like you care about him. Death smiled. He is my brother. Or at least the closest thing I have to one, he explained. We need one another. We cannot exist without each other. I reap what he sows. It is a never-ending cycle, one we are a part of, whether we like it or not. Naruto nodded. He knew what the feeling of having a loved one is like. Death then became serious. Please don't tell anyone I showed compassion and reverence just now. I have an image to maintain, after all. Naruto laughed. I won't, I promise. Death nodded. Good. A moment of silence passed before Naruto asked another question. What's a Jinchuriki? He asked. Death froze for a moment before answering. A living sacrifice. Someone who contains one of the 9 Biju within themselves and can use its power. Naruto thought before asking, am I one? Death looked at the boy and nodded. Yes, you carry within you the Kyubi no Yoko, the most powerful of the 9. Naruto suddenly realized why nearly everyone hated him, calling him a monster, a demon, or a freak. He understood why the bare-masked Anbiyu had called him Kyubi, and why Omen attacked him. The truth hit him like a 10-ton sack of bricks. Then it's true, he said, sadly, tears forming in his eyes. I really am a monster. No! Naruto nearly jumped out of his skin at Death's sudden outburst. Death continued, you are not a monster, and you are not a demon. You are human. You are merely the prison which contains the fox's power. Were it not for you, the Kyubi would have destroyed Konoha. Naruto simply stood there contemplating. Finally he looked at Death and asked, how do you know I'm not a monster? Not a demon? Death smiled. I have seen monsters and demons. I know their tricks and their powers. And I know you are human. Trust me, I'm older than the universe itself. I know what I'm talking about. Naruto wiped his eyes of tears and smiled. Thank you, he said. Certainly, Death replied, smiling. But why does everyone think I'm the Kyuubi? Can't they tell the difference? Death shook his horned head. They could if they could look past their grief, he explained. When Naruto opened his mouth to ask what he meant, Death continued. Nearly everyone in the village lost someone in the Kyuubi's attack. A friend, family member, lover, everyone. I would know, my reapers and I were very busy that day. Grief can drive humans to do any number of unspeakable things and do anything to cope. They wanted to blame something, someone, for their loss, and so they chose you. You, who contained the very being that ruined their lives. Naruto nodded. It made sense. Will they ever realize I'm not the Kyuubi? Doubtful. Humanity as a whole is stubborn and likes to think it is always right. Admitting when they are wrong goes against their very nature. I'm sorry, but it would take a miracle to convince the villagers, and those are few and far between, he explained sadly. Naruto seemed saddened before perking up. If there's way, I'll find it, he promised. Death chuckled. And I wish you luck in that endeavor. Several more moments passed in silence before Naruto asked a nagging question in his mind. So he began, what happens now? Death looked down at him. Now? Now you go back to the land of the living and I don't see you again until your appropriate time of death, he told the mortal boy. When is that? Naruto asked, relieved he would be going back, but worried about how much time he had left. Death laughed. I can't tell you that, boy. Suffice to say it won't be for quite some time. Naruto sighed in relief before another question popped into his mind. What about the scythe? He asked, holding up said weapon. Harvest, Death corrected before shrugging. Keep it. Naruto's eyes widened. Really? He asked excitedly, like a kid on Christmas morning. Death chuckled. Of course. It chose you after all. What do you mean? The boy asked, confused. Did you notice how Omen could call Harvest back to himself after he threw it at you? He asked. Naruto nodded, remembering the blow that knocked the wind out of him. And did you notice that Harvest wouldn't respond to him after you picked it up? Naruto nodded again. Harvest is a sentient weapon, he explained. It thinks and feels, and it decided that you were a more worthy master than Omen. It has bound itself to you. I couldn't take it from you even if I wanted to. Naruto looked down at his new weapon. Hard to believe this thing is alive, he thought to himself. He then felt a small surge of power coming from the scythe. He didn't know how, but he knew Harvest was saying I am alive. Naruto smiled before looking back at Death. Won't everyone be surprised if I just return from the dead? Death chuckled. Most definitely, he answered, but that will just make it more interesting. Naruto laughed. Yeah, I guess so. He then became serious. Alright, I'm ready. Death nodded. Very well, he said, and then began channeling his power before suddenly stopping. Then again, this is a rather rare opportunity, he mumbled to himself. Perhaps if yes, that might just work. Naruto was worried now. Was Death going to change his mind? Death then looked at Naruto and smiled. I have a proposition for you, Naruto Uzumaki. Would you like to hear it? He asked. Naruto was still worried but nodded. I need you to promise me you will listen to everything I say first and wait until after I'm done to decide. Can you do that? Naruto nodded again. Death smiled. Good, and then began explaining. Let me first start by telling you a story. Long ago, before recorded history, the Creator made the first of humanity, Adam and Eve, and allowed them to live in the realm of Eden, an earthly paradise where all would be provided for them. They would be the first, the paragon for what this new species should be. But, even in its infancy, humanity was vulnerable to corruption. Adam and Eve fell for the manipulations of Lucifer, otherwise known as the devil, Satan, Iblis, Shaitan, or the fallen one among others. He convinced Eve to eat from the forbidden tree of knowledge, who then convinced Adam to do the same. Because of this act of defiance, the Creator cast Adam and Eve out of Eden and onto earth. He then made it so that they and their descendants would have to work, have to shed their blood, sweat, and tears for their rewards. Nearly everyone knows this story. What humanity doesn't know is what happened next. The Creator realized that the human race was vulnerable to the corrupting influence of the denizens of hell and their lord and master, Lucifer. To combat this threat, the Creator came to me. You see, my purpose is to gather the souls of the dead and send them from this life to the next. Who better to protect mankind from the threat of the supernatural than the one who straddles the worlds between life and afterlife? The Creator asked me to create a way to fight this threat, a first and last line of defense between the human race and those who seek to exploit or destroy it. And so, I created the Reaper Corps, a group of humanity's finest and noblest soldiers, warriors, assassins, thieves, scientists, engineers, philosophers, alchemists, and the like. I would wait until their time on Earth was spent, and would offer them a place in my organization upon their deaths. It was a volunteer-only group, and those who did not want to join could simply pass on to the afterlife. Anyway, the core goal was simple: protect mankind from the supernatural forces that wished to destroy, corrupt, or enslave it. We were to preserve the balance between heaven, hell, and earth. The only catch was that mankind could not know about us or the supernatural in general. The panic that would spread would be catastrophic. Also, our members must sever all ties to their previous lives and never attempt to contact their loved ones. No one must ever know that they still walk the earth. Ever. And so, we work in secret. The core has saved creation countless times throughout history, and is still alive today. When not fighting the supernatural, the Reapers spend their time honing their skills or brining the souls of the deceased for judgment. Omen was one such Reaper until he put his petty vendetta ahead of the cause, the balance, and his brothers and sisters in arms. Naruto's jaw was practically on the ground. Not only was Death Death, but he was also the creator and leader of a secret organization of heroes who fight the supernatural. This led to a question: supernatural? You mean demons, right? Demons, fallen angels, monsters, spirits, the undead, all of these things and more, he answered. Naruto was now even further surprised. Death knew what he was thinking. Yes, mortal, nearly everything supernatural you were told wasn't real, is. You mean like ghosts, werewolves, vampires, and zombies? He asked excitedly. Death smiled at his enthusiasm. Yes, 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 and yes. Oh my goodness, yes. That's awesome, he exclaimed before confusion defined his features. But what does that have to do with me? Death explained. Well, with Omen dead, I find myself in need of a replacement for him, and I was hoping you would fill his position. Naruto's eyes widened so much that it was a miracle they didn't fall out of his head. And me? He asked. But I'm not a hero. I don't have the skills to be a part of the core. Not yet, Death told him, but you have great potential. You were able to kill a veteran Reaper with his own weapon. Granted, he wasn't able to instantly overpower you because he acted outside of my authority, but he was still an accomplished warrior. Naruto was sorely tempted to accept but remembered his precious people. Doesn't that mean I would have to stay dead? He asked. Death smiled even wider. Normally yes, but as I said, I have a proposition for you. You delay your return to life and travel to my realm. Ah! Let me finish, he said as he noticed Naruto about to protest. Naruto closed his mouth and let Death proceed. As I was saying, you delay your return to life and travel with me to my realm, the Void, where the Reaper Corps headquarters is located. You spend a few years training there in the ways of battle and learn all there is to know about the supernatural. Then, when your training is complete, you return to Earth and become my personal representative in all things living. Meaning you hunt down those who try to cheat death, among other things. Naruto was really excited now. Can I still be a ninja? He asked. Death smiled. But of course. Being a shinobi, you will often come across things you must also deal with as a Reaper as well. Sometimes, the two careers will intersect. Naruto was really excited now. He could have the best of both worlds. He was about to accept before Death held up his hand to stop him. But be warned, he cautioned, the life of a Reaper is not an easy one. The training will be brutal, arduous, and almost cruel in its execution. You will encounter things that will haunt both your nightmares and your waking thoughts. You will be forced to make difficult decisions for the good of humanity. You will make powerful enemies who will likely target those you care for out of revenge. Most importantly, you may very well die an early death. In addition, being a Reaper is a lifelong commitment. If you join, you cannot leave until you either die or until I release you from your duty, something that will take a very long time to happen. And so, Naruto Uzumaki, knowing this, I make you this offer. Will you join the Reaper Corps? If you say yes, your new life begins. If not, I will not consider you a coward or uncommitted. I will send you back to Earth with no strings attached. You can even keep Harvest Death pause before continuing. I'll give you 1 hour to think about it. I will return expecting your answer. Think carefully and choose wisely. And with that said, Death vanished, leaving Naruto alone on the floating platform. Naruto sat down and began to think, weighing his options. 1 hour later, Death reappeared and gazed at the waiting Naruto. Have you come to a decision? He asked. I have, Naruto answered. There was a long pause before Naruto continued. I accept your offer, he answered with absolute conviction. Death was unsurprised by this. Are you certain? He asked. Naruto nodded. I thought about what you said. I know being a Reaper will be hard, but my whole life has been hard from the start. It seems no matter what I do, my life, and those dear to me, will always be in danger, supernatural or not. I made a promise that I would protect them. They saved me, so I will save them. It doesn't matter if the threats are human or not, I will keep my promise. He vowed with as much passion as he could and then smirked. Besides, he hoisted up Harvest. I got this new weapon, might as well learn how to use it. Death smiled. So be it then. Let us be off. Naruto nodded and then asked a question. One last thing, will my loved ones know I'm alive sort of? Death chuckled. Don't worry, it's been taken care of. And with that they disappeared, bound for the void and to a new and better future. The Hokage Tower, soon after Naruto's death. Hiruzen Sarutobi had just arrived at his office, depressed and drained. He was really feeling his age with Naruto gone. That boy had been so full of life, things were never depressing while he was around. And now he was dead. What am I going to tell the others? He mentally asked, referring to Naruto's other friends and loved ones. Sighing, the old Kage opened the door to his office and walked in only to find someone sitting at his desk, reading a certain orange, well, let's just call it a novel, that belonged to the old man. He couldn't make out its face behind the book, but he could see its shaggy white hair. Is this really what passes for human literature? The stranger asked rhetorically in a soft, rasping voice. If so, I find myself supremely disappointed. The Hokage tensed at the sight of the intruder and took a fighting stance. Unbu! He called out, knowing they were hidden nearby, ready to answer his call. But this time, no one came. They cannot hear you, Hiruzen Sarutobi. Time has stopped. A small alteration so that we may speak privately, the stranger explained, still reading. The Sandaime looked outside his office door and saw the people in the hall were frozen, like statues. The old Hokage glanced back at the intruder, whose face was still hidden by the book. Who are you? How did you get in here? He demanded. The stranger chuckled. You'll find I can do anything if I have a mind to do so, he answered. As for my name, well, you already know it. Everyone, living or dead, knows me. The Sandaime was confused. I am the shadows, the being that haunts all things. I am a whisper in your ear, the feeling you get when you feel you are being watched, the shiver down your spine. I am the end of all things. But most importantly, he then lowered the book, revealing his demonic face, a face the Sandaime knew all too well. I am death, he answered simply. Hiruzen gasped. The Shinigami. He whispered. Death shrugged. Some call me that. Also, the Grim Reaper, the Devourer of Souls, the Destroyer of Worlds. But I prefer to be called by what I am, Death. The Sandaime stared at one of the most powerful beings in this or any other universe. Why are you here? He asked. Are you here to take me? Because I assure you it will not be easy, he declared, dropping into a stance. Death scoffed. Actually, it would be easy if that were the reason why I am here. But it is not. Your time has not yet come, Sandaime Hokage, he then smirked. At least, not yet. The Hokage suppressed a shudder at that comment. Then what do you want? The Sandaime demanded angrily. Haven't you already taken enough today? Death remained calm. You refer to one Naruto Uzumaki, yes? He asked. That is precisely the reason I came to speak with you. You see, there was a bit of a misunderstanding on my end. Misunderstanding? The old man asked. Death nodded. You see, Naruto Uzumaki was not supposed to die today. The Sandaime's eyes widened. Not supposed to dash. But he did, he exclaimed. Because of the meddling of one of my servants. He held a deep grudge against demons and believed the Biju were a threat to humanity. He planned to collect the boy's soul and sentence him to eternal damnation. The Hokage was now frightened for Naruto's safety, but death soon calmed him down. Calm yourself, mortal. The boy is safe. He overpowered the meddler and killed him, he explained. Hiruzen was shocked. Wait, he dash. What? Death proceeded to explain the battle between Naruto and Omen. The Sandaime was amazed. Naruto was normally such a kind and gentle boy. It must have taken quite a bit to force him to use the Kyuubi's power, and even more so to kill someone. A thought occurred to the old Kage. Wait, does this mean you will resurrect him? He asked cautiously. Of course, Death answered, but not just yet. The Hokage felt his hope rise and then fall at these words. What do you mean? He asked. You see, I made a proposition to young Naruto and he accepted. Before the mortal Kage could respond, Death elaborated. Naruto is going to spend a few years in my realm, the Void. There, he will be trained by the best the afterlife has to offer. And when his training is complete, he will return and become one of your shinobi. The Sandaime was suspicious. And what, exactly, do you get out of this deal? He asked. Death smiled. When he returns, he'll tell you. He will enjoy the look on your face when he tells you what he has become a part of. Naturally, this made the old man even more confused, but he knew better than to force the issue. He was speaking to Death himself, after all. He decided to ask a different question. When will he return? When do the next batch of genin graduate? Death asked. In 4 years, the mortal answered. Death smiled. Sometime before that then. Before you say anything about letting him graduate despite not attending the academy, I suggest you let him graduate anyway. Hiruzen was about to protest when Death interrupted. I assure you, the training he will receive will more than make up for it 1,000-fold. I promise you this, he will eclipse the other genin in terms of skill, intelligence, and power. He will make you and your village proud, and he will be a bane to your enemies. The Sandaime saw the serious look in the Grim Reaper's eyes and knew he was telling the truth. Okay, then, he conceded before sighing, the council will throw a fit about this. The civilian and advisor sides at any rate. Death scoffed, what does it matter what they think? You are Hokage, you are above them physically, mentally, and morally. I suggest you remind them of that, he advised the old man. Hiruzen nodded in agreement. Death stood up, placing the novel down. Well then, I guess I'll be off, he then prepared to leave. Wait. Death stopped at the old Kage's word. Yes? He asked. Could you please tell Naruto that I'm glad he's alive and look forward to seeing him again? He asked to the point of pleading. Death nodded. I think he already knows, he answered, but I'll tell him anyway. And with that, he vanished and time resumed. Hiruzen just stood there for a moment, contemplating the events that had just transpired and what he had just learned. Hokage-sama? One of the ANBU outside had noticed his superior had just stopped in the middle of his office and just stood there. Are you all right? He asked, concerned. The Sandaime shook himself out his thoughts and looked at his subordinate. Yes, I'm quite fine, he answered before looking at the clock on a nearby wall. It was almost midnight. He then turned to the ANBU. First thing tomorrow morning, I want you to find Naruto Uzumaki's closest friends and bring them to my office, he ordered. The ANBU bowed. Yes, Hokage-sama. With that, the old Kage closed the door behind him and went to finish his work for the day before going home. He smiled to himself. Tomorrow is going to be a busy day, he thought to himself. Chapter 1. From Dust I Am Reborn. A bandit camp in Earth Country years later. What's the haul this week? One nameless bandit asked his friend. The two thugs were guarding the entrance to their camp, a large cave entrance. 2 caravans, he answered. Not as much take as the last time, mostly junk, but we got a consolation prize. What was it? The second bandit smirked. We got the daughter of an Earth nobleman, he told his partner. She hot? The first asked. He nodded. Yep, but the boss says we can't touch her. Says we're gonna ransom her back to her old man, he explained. The other bandit frowned too but then shrugged. Oh well, at least we can make some decent cash. His friend smiled wickedly. Oh, but it gets better, he said. The boss wants to wait until the nobleman arrives with the money. Then we kill his guards and take the ransom. Then take him hostage and hold him for ransom for the Earth Daimyo. After that, the girl's all ours. The first bandit smiled. 2 paydays for the price of 1. Let's just hope we get a turn before some of the other guys. They always use them up quickly and I ain't into dead chicks. I hear you, the second said, agreeing. Unfortunately for them, they would never be able to indulge in their desires because of what happened next. In a swirl of shadows, a lone figure appeared. Judging from his build, he was male. He was a little over 6 feet tall and was obviously muscular but not overly so. He was wearing a black trench coat with an attached hood, which concealed his face, a black shirt, black pants, black combat boots, and black, fingerless gloves. Under his left wrist was a strange, eye-shaped tattoo. Though they couldn't see it since he was facing them, on the back of his coat was the kanji for death and the words, "No escape," were printed in the color of flames. At the center of his back was an image of 2 sides in a crossbones position with a demonic skull at the center. A circle of flames were surrounding it. All were a bright blood red. What worried the 2 men most, however, was the wicked-looking, curved blade mounted on his right forearm. The 2 thugs jumped up, held up their weapons, and tried their best to be intimidating. They failed. Who the hell are Dash? That was all the first bandit could say before, in a burst of speed, the hooded man appeared behind them. He then turned around, swinging his blade as he did, and beheaded both men in a single swing. The 2 men seemed to freeze and then blood appeared on their necks as their heads slid off, falling to the ground, the rest of them soon following. The hooded man then turned and looked at the cave entrance ahead. All right, he thought, this is the place, let's hope he's here and not out plundering. He then shook his head. No, he'll be here. Why would he do the work when he has a bunch of dumb thugs to do it for him? In a burst of dark energy, the arm blade disappeared and a wicked-looking scythe appeared in his hands. Let's get to it then, he thought as he moved further into the cave. Bandit Camp Main Tent. Inside the main tent, the bandit leader was sitting on his makeshift throne, with several other members nearby, guarding him. He was tall, a good 6 feet 5 inches, heavily muscled, and covered with scars. He was bald and had no facial hair. A large scar ran from the top of his head, over his right eye, and down to his chin. Whatever had created the scar had also blinded that same eye, with it being pale and the other being dark brown. He wore a pair of dark brown pants and wore no top, showing off his broad chest. This man was truly an intimidating sight, sitting on a throne made of bones. His men knew little about him. He had appeared with 10 other men a few months ago and had challenged the previous leader of the gang to a one-on-one fight for leadership. The man won easily, slaughtering his foe and making his position as leader absolute. Some men fought against his claim. They, along with the former leader, were used to create his throne. Since his arrival, the gang had been doing extremely well. The new boss seemed to always know who and what to rob and what to let pass. The haul they had taken in had tripled since his takeover, which satisfied the rest of the gang. Truly, things for them couldn't be better. That was about to change. The bandit leader was currently contemplating the gang's next move, when he heard a whimper nearby. He looked up to see the captive noble's daughter, locked in a small cage, crying. She was in her late teens and beautiful, with long brown hair, deep green eyes, and a great body. The leader growled, "Quiet," he ordered darkly, "your whimpering grates on my ears." Suddenly the sounds of battle reached his ears, the clang and clatter of blades, the sound of a sharp weapon piercing flesh, and screaming. A bandit standing next to his throne, one of the 10 who had arrived with him, looked to the entrance of the tent. "Master," he said in a worried tone. "At last, one has come," the leader said. Suddenly, a single bandit, fear clear on his face, burst through the tent. "Boss! Boss!" he called, terrified, "we're in true dash." The man never finished his sentence. He was impaled from behind by a curved blade. Before he could even gasp in pain, the blade was pulled violently upward, severing him in half. Then the blade's owner walked into the tent, holding a spear whose hilt seemed to be made of bone. The blade then swung down, turning the weapon into a scythe. The other bandits, minus the leader and the 10 who had arrived with him, stared in fear of the hooded man. The leader and the other 10 glared at him. "You should have stayed in the hell," Resin the man said, looking at the leader. The bandits, minus 10 of them, were confused. Resin? That wasn't the boss's name. And what did he mean by stayed in hell? The bandit leader continued to glare. "And you should not have come here, servant of death," he retorted, confusing the others even more. "You should have expected this," the hooded man said. "No one hides from us." "Whoever said I was hiding?" the leader asked. "I knew you would find us eventually. I'm only surprised that your master wasn't wise enough to send more of you." "One is sufficient." "You overestimate your strength, demon," the man replied, further confusing most of the other bandits. The leader growled. "It is you who underestimates me," he snarled. "I have killed your kind before." "No, you haven't," the man said. "We would know if you had." "Lying will change nothing," he said. He then turned and saw the captive girl, staring at him with a mix of hope and fear on her beautiful, tear-stained face. "Is this what Lucifer's pets do to get their kicks now? Kidnap defenseless girls?" he taunted. The leader snarled at him. The hooded man ignored this, his tone becoming serious again. "Resin, you and your followers have violated the balance by escaping hell and have committed numerous crimes since then. I'm giving you and your followers a single chance to surrender and return to hell peacefully," he told the leader before saying, darkly, "I assure you, this is the only outcome where you survive." The leader then stood to his feet, glaring bloody murder at the hooded man. Suddenly, the sickening sound of bones cracking and breaking engulfed the tent. The leader's skin began to bulge as something appeared to be growing inside of him, something large. Then, his skin began to tear as something seemed to burst out of him. It was tall, a full 9 feet, muscular, with dark skin and black fur covering its shoulders, forearms, and legs. Its feet were hooved, like those of a horse. It had a human face, with red eyes, no hair, and 2 long, ibex-like horns protruding out of its head. Around its neck, it wore a collar of what looked to be a mix of chain mail and bone, which spread down to the top of its chest in length. In width, it spread to the black fur on its shoulders. It also wore this chain mail around its forearms, lower legs, and its waist, which was wide and resembled a kilt. It held a large scimitar in one of its hands that seemed to be made of both metal and bone. This was a guardian demon, a species that ranked above some of the lesser demons in Hell's hierarchy, the regular demon enemies in Dante's Inferno. Nearby, the leader's 10 original followers were undergoing a similar transformation, with strange beings tearing out of their skin. These creatures were taller than humans but shorter than the guardian, reaching 7 feet tall. They were muscular, hairless, and had scaly, bluish-purple skin. Their faces were bestial in appearance, with horse-like ears, black eyes, a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, and 2 curved horns on the top of their heads. A pair of small, vestigial wings adorned their backs. They wore simple, metal armor leggings on their lower bodies and metal gauntlets on their forearms. Each creature had different markings across their torsos, with things like skulls, bones, flames, thorns, and demonic symbols covering them. Each held intimidating axes, swords, maces, or spears made of either bone or metal in one of their hands. These were demon soldiers, which served as the backbone of all of Hell's legions, the Phantom Guard enemies from Darksiders. After removing the remaining scraps of skin from their bodies, the demons were glaring and growling at the hooded warrior. The remaining bandits and the captive girl were nauseous and terrified at the revealing of these two species of demon. The bandits were too scared to move and the girl couldn't move because of the cage she was in. Then, Resin spoke. "It is your life you should be concerned with," he shouted in rage. He then pointed to the hooded man. "Tear the flesh from his bones," he commanded the soldiers. The demons roared and charged, raising their weapons. The hooded man leapt into the air. As he flew over the soldiers, he dropped a small pellet. When it hit the ground, it exploded into a wide smoke screen, causing the demons to search for their foe aimlessly. The warrior landed and attacked his blinded foes. He aimed a low slash at one foe, severing its legs, crippling it. He then used the spear mode of his weapon and impaled another soldier from behind. He rolled to the side, in between two more oblivious demons. He tapped one on the shoulder. The soldier let out a confused grunt and then turned around and swung its axe in the direction it felt the tap from, bringing the blade down on the back on another soldier's head, killing it instantly. Seeing his smoke screen was about to dissipate, he leapt into the air and landed outside of its area of effect. The smoke then cleared, and the humans and demons in the room saw the carnage. 2 soldiers were dead, their bodies becoming a crusted lava color before dissolving into a black smoke that reeked of sulfur and brimstone, and another was legless, crawling along the ground and bleeding. The soldiers then noticed their foe and roared, charging him. To every human surprise, the warrior charged back. He impaled one soldier, using it to pole vault forward and kick another in the chest, knocking it down. He then spun around, slicing another soldier in half. The soldier that had been knocked down had gotten to its feet. It roared and charged forward, the warrior merely standing there. Just as the demon was about to run the warrior through with its spear, he disappeared in a puff of smoke and another, now very confused, soldier appeared in his place. The charging soldier was unable to stop in time and ended up impaling the other through the chest, shock evident on both of their faces. Suddenly the warrior appeared behind the demon that had charged him and swung his scythe, beheading it. The 3 remaining demons then charged him. In a swirl of dark energy, the scythe shifted into an arm blade as the warrior pulled 3 serrated knives from within his coat. He blocked a downward stab of one soldier, then swiftly plunged a knife into its stomach, before moving ahead. The demon was only irritated by the blade and attempted to pull it out, only to find it would not budge. The warrior dodged a slash from the second soldier and spun around it, stabbing another knife into its back before moving to the third soldier. As the demon slashed, the warrior dropped to the ground, sliding between its legs and plunging the last knife into one of its legs as he went. He then stood up and looked at the soldiers. Each was annoyed as well as angry, being unable to remove the knives from their persons. They were about to attack again when they heard a beeping sound. The demons looked and saw that the knives had a red light on the hilt that was flashing with each beep. The beeping then grew faster. The soldiers' eyes widened as they realized what was about to happen. They then frantically tried to remove the beeping knives. Despite their strength, none could remove their blade. The beeping was now extremely rapid now and then stopped. Boom! The knives detonated, scattering bloody, demonic chunks of flesh across the room which soon dissolved. The humans in the room stared in awe at the hooded man's victory. Resin, meanwhile, was seething. He looked to see the legless soldier, the only one left, crawling towards him with a pleading expression on its face. Before it got even halfway to its master, the hooded warrior stepped on its back, before impaling it through the skull with his weapon's glaive end. He pulled the blade out and looked up at Resin. "Care to surrender now?" he asked, grinning behind his hood. Resin roared in rage, seemingly shaking the entire cave, before leaping into the air and landing behind the man. The warrior turned and blocked an attack from the bone sword before spinning around behind the guardian and slashing at his back. Resin leapt forward, dodging it, before turning around and aiming another slash at his foe. The warrior ducked under it and kicked the demon in the side of the leg, knocking him off balance and bringing him to his knees. The warrior then kicked him in the chest, knocking him back to the front of his throne and disarming him. "Give up, Resin, this can only end one way," the warrior warned. Resin snarled in fury. "I would sooner bend my knee to the creator than yield to a worthless flesh bag like you," he declared. The guardian then gathered demonic energy into his hands and launched a small, but powerful, ball of hellfire at his foe. A hellbolt. To everyone's surprise, instead of dodging, the warrior stood still and held out one of his hands. "Dark release," inhaling Ma, he murmured. To the shock of all, the hellbolt seemed to be sucked into his outstretched palm. "What? How did you dash?" Resin attempted to ask before the warrior spoke again. "Dark release, judgment," he murmured again. The very same hellbolt that had been absorbed before was launched out of his raised hand and flew back towards its master. Before Resin could even flinch, the hellbolt struck him in the chest and launched him backwards. He smashed through his throne, shattering it to pieces, and out the back of the tent, where he hit the cave wall, hard. Resin groaned in pain as he attempted to stand up. Before he had even gotten halfway there, the warrior appeared in front of him and impaled him through the chest with the spear mode of his weapon. No one escapes the Reapers, he told the shock demon, before yanking out the blade. Resin, with a pained, shocked face, reached towards his killer with one clawed hand and then went limp, his body dissolving soon after. The hooded warrior simply stared at the place the demon's body had been before turning and head towards the tent. Now, he thought, to take care of loose ends. The warrior walked into the tent to find the bandits and captives still there eyeing him with fear. He made a cross-shaped hand sign and 5 identical hooded men appeared next to him. Gather their weapons, he ordered, referring to the demon weapons. The 5 shadow clones soon began to gather the weapons and seal them into scrolls before handing him the scrolls and poofing out of existence. He then approached the bandits. One bandit tried to speak but couldn't quite get it out. He tried again. Those? The warrior asked, finishing the word. The bandit continued. Were not human? He asked / finished. No, they were not. They were demons. 1 guardian demon accompanied by 10 soldier demons to be precise, he told them. The guardian possessed the body of a small-time bandit leader who then forced his men to surrender their souls for his soldiers to possess them. Resin, the guardian, was your real boss the whole time. The bandits were shocked by this revelation. The warrior then continued, he's not a problem anymore. I killed him and now he brandished his scythe. I'm going to make sure you never tell anyone about what you saw today. The bandits panicked. Whoa. Wait. We won't tell anyone. Not a soul. We swear. One pleaded. Please, he scoffed. You'd spill all of your secrets for a shot of sake or a free night with some whore in an instant. Besides, you're all a bunch of murderous thugs. If I let you go, you'll go back to being just that. Also, he then pointed to the captive girl. You were intending to rape that poor girl, and if it's one thing I don't tolerate, it's rapists. He snarled. The bandits were now trembling. Please, just let us go. We won't do anything like that ever again. The warrior nodded. That's right. You won't. He then turned to the captive girl. Cover your ears, close your eyes, and count to 10, he ordered. She seemed hesitant, but did so. And with that the warrior slaughtered the whimpering thugs before him. He finished just before she reached 10. She opened her eyes and saw the hooded man standing at the gate to her tiny cage, his scythe holstered behind his back. The mutilated bodies of the slain thugs lay behind him. He stood in the way of her view, ensuring she wouldn't have to lay eyes on the gruesome sight. She backed up as far as the cage would allow, which wasn't much, in fear. Shhhh, he told her gently, a great change from his cold tone from before. It's all right, miss. I'm not going to hurt you, he promised. After a moment she relaxed, though her eyes still held a hint of fear. I'm going to let you out now. Is that all right? He asked. Not trusting her voice, she nodded. The warrior then grabbed the door to her cage and, with a small grunt, tore it off its hinges before throwing it across the room, shocking the former prisoner with his strength. With the door now open, the girl crawled out and stood up, only for her legs to wobble and give way, the cause being her being locked away in a space where she could not stand for a few days. The hooded warrior caught her in mid-fall and she couldn't help but blush at the feeling of his muscular chest underneath his clothes. The warrior gently set her down and kneeled next to her. What's your name? He asked. She waited a moment before answering. Keikomi, he replied in a shaky voice. Pure beauty, well, it certainly fits, he said, smiling beneath his hood. Kiyomi blushed. Thank you for rescuing me, she said. He smiled beneath his hood. You are most welcome. He then saw she was still trembling. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I saw a large group of samurai wandering around nearby, he told her. They are likely looking for you. They'll probably be here soon. Kiyomi's eyes widened. Those were her father's men. The hooded man continued, unfortunately, I can't be here when they arrive, so this is where we part ways. But first, I need to ensure you will never tell them or anyone else what happened. Kiyomi began to back away in fear. He held up his hands. Calm down. I'm not going to hurt you, he promised. I'm just going to wipe your memory of what happened here. Kiyomi relaxed. You can do that? She asked. He nodded. Of course, just look into my eyes, he said as he approached her. Wait, she said, giving him pause. Will I remember you? Will I ever see you again? She asked. The man was now directly in front of her. I'll see you, he told her, but you won't see me. He looked into her eyes. His eyes seemed to glow white for a moment before returning to normal. Barely a second later, Kiyomi's eyes glowed white before returning to normal. She then proceeded to pass out, with the warrior slowly lowering her to the ground. He stood up and heard the sounds of the samurai entering the cave. Time to go, he thought before disappearing in a swirl of shadows. He reappeared outside the cave just as the last samurai entered it. He then raised a hand to his ear. Mission complete. Bring me home. And with that he vanished. The Palace of Decay, headquarters of the Reaper Corps in the void. The hooded man reappeared within a large room of the castle, where several others were gathered, talking and preparing. A group of hooded figures were aiding the others in their preparations. Welcome back, Reaper Uzumaki, one of the attendants said in their usual, whispering tone. The hooded man then removed his hood, revealing a handsome face, with 3 whisker marks on either side of his cheeks and spiky, blonde hair. It's good to be back, Naruto Uzumaki said as he left the room to report to his master. It has been 4 years since Naruto's death, and the years had been kind to him. He was taller now, more muscular, and had lost all of his baby fat. He was no longer an impatient, hyperactive little kid, he was now a full-fledged Reaper, an intelligent, calculating slayer of the supernatural. Since joining, he hadn't regretted being a part of the Corps for even a moment. What Death had warned him about was true, the training had been brutal, but the end result was worth it. He was stronger, faster, and tougher than ever before. In addition to this, time passed differently here. While he had only been gone 4 years in Earth time, he had been in the void for 8. Thus, Naruto had 8 years of training under his belt. The training took years, but eventually, he was awarded by being made a true member of the Corps. He had served as a Reaper proudly for the past 2 void years, the equivalent of 1 Earth year, and had already earned the respect and friendship of most of his fellows. He had yet to learn to harness the full potential of the power given to him, but he was making progress. Despite having lived in the void for 8 years, his body was still aging in Earth years, so he was, technically, 15 years old. As he made his way to the throne room, where Death resided, he was interrupted by a regular annoyance that plagued the palace. "Ah, you've returned," Naruto, the voice said in a smooth voice. "I trust your mission went well?" Naruto sighed mentally and turned. Standing in front of him was a creature. It was unnaturally thin and taller than he was by about 2 feet. It had a demonic face, blue, scaly skin, emerald eyes without pupils, and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. It had 2 large horns growing out of its head and 2 small, stunted wings wrapped in bandages on its back. Its arms were thin and had numerous golden bands on them. The arms seemed comical when compared to the large, clawed hands that were attached to them. It had no legs to speak of and merely floated above the ground. Around its waist, it wore long, flowing cloth, almost dress-like in appearance, with strange patterns extending downwards. On its head, it wore a headdress that extended down to its mid-shoulders. At the top of the headdress was 2 black horns with a small, demonic, skull-shaped accessory. The creature's chest was bare, save for a strange eye-shaped medallion that appeared to be fused to its chest, right over where the heart would be. Dangling from this medallion was 3 small hooks. Finally, around its waist dangled a large variety of scrolls, trinkets, and baubles. This was Vulgrim, one of the few demons who could float freely through the palace's halls and not be slaughtered on sight. "What do you want, Vulgrim?" Naruto asked in an annoyed tone. A false, hurt expression appeared on the demon's face, as he clutched where his heart was. "Oh, how you wound me with your words, young one," he said in a false tone of pain. "Can't a humble merchant have a simple chat, an old friend?" he asked. Naruto's eyes narrowed. "You don't have friends, Vulgrim. You have customers," he told the demon. Said demon chuckled darkly. "Quite right," he conceded. "Very well, on to business." Vulgrim was a merchant by trade, with connections across all realms, and the Reaper Corps was one of his best clients. Vulgrim was known for being able to acquire any item, no matter its rarity, and this was one of the reasons the Corps kept him around. That, and with his connections, he was a veritable wealth of information. He was an annoyance, but a useful one. One who was wise enough not to betray them. Vulgrim continued to speak. "I came by to collect on the last of the payment you owe me," he told the blonde Reaper while floating around him in circles. "Gathering information on the whereabouts of that coven of necromancers was neither easy nor cheap, you know." Naruto sighed, remembering he still owed the demon for a mission he completed a while back. "Very well," he sighed. He unholstered his scythe and held it out in front of him. For a moment, nothing happened. And then, the eyes of both of the demonic faces on either side of the scythe began to glow, and a strange, pale green energy began to seep out of it. It began to swirl around before floating towards Vulgrim. The demon grinned as he opened his mouth wide and inhaled. The strange energy was sucked into Vulgrim's mouth. After a few seconds of this, the energy was all gone, straight down the demon's gullet. Vulgrim closed his mouth. He said, satisfied with his meal. A guardian was in there, aged perfectly. While most demons prefer to devour the souls of mortals, Vulgrim had learned to feed off of the soul energy of most other creatures, even his own kind. Most of his customers paid in gold or precious gems as well as rare and valuable artifacts, but the demonic merchant accepted soul energy as well, and the Reaper Corps provided this in abundance. Reaper weapons could harvest this energy from all the enemies they had slain. This energy could be used for many purposes, but most of it was used to pay for Volgrim's services. Naruto then holstered his weapon. I trust this makes us even? He asked. He asked, lost in his own little world. Oh. Yes, it most certainly does, he replied. Now, I believe our business is concluded, he said before grinning. Unless you'd like to browse my wares? He asked hopefully. No, thank you. Volgrim shrugged. Suit yourself. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. And with that he floated off. Greedy son of a bitch, Naruto mentally grumbled before continuing on to the throne room. He then paused, remembering the weapons he had taken from the demons. Better turn these in before meeting the boss, he thought. He then turned to another hallway and continued walking. The foundry. The sounds of hammers meeting metal, grind wheels sharpening blades, and grunts of exertion echoed throughout the room as dozens of blacksmiths were at work. And what a room it was! It was huge and was covered with all the smelting and blacksmith equipment a craftsman could ever want or need. As Naruto moved through the room, he smelled smoke and sweat. He could feel the intense heat even before he walked in. It was fortunate that all members of the Corps had a greater resilience to heat and cold than living humans, otherwise everyone in the room would be dehydrated and overcome with heat stroke. After a few moments, he finally made his way to the Forge Master. He was taller than Naruto by a great deal, standing at a whopping 15 feet tall. He was heavily muscular, bare-chested, and covered in ash and soot. Despite his intimidating build, it was not his most distinctive feature. What really caused him to stand out was his hair and beard. Both were thick and dirty, but they also seemed to be made of fire. He was currently busy with his massive forge and didn't notice his visitor. Hephaestus, Naruto called out, getting the giant's attention. So focused on his work, the Forge Master jumped up in surprise at the sound of his name, his head hitting a large rack of hanging tools. "Ow, shite! Son of a bitch!" he swore in a deep Scottish accent, holding his forehead in pain. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. Hephaestus turned and saw him. "Glad ya find this so fucking funny, ya cheeky little bastard," he growled out. Naruto managed to control himself enough to speak. "Sorry, old man," he said, "but you have to admit it's funny to see a god bang his head like that." "Former god," Hephaestus corrected. His forehead finally stopped throbbing. He then looked at the blonde reaper and smiled, knowing it was all in good fun. "So, what can I do for ya, blondie?" he asked. Hephaestus was once one of the Olympian gods and crafted a great many items, weapons, and armor of legendary status for his fellows on Mount Olympus. Despite his skill, he was treated like an abusive parent would treat an ugly stepchild and kept him hidden away, something Naruto could relate to. When the Divinity War broke out, Hephaestus chose to stay neutral, and thus, when the pagan gods were defeated, he was among the few that was spared the Creator's wrath. Alone and without purpose, Death approached the Smith god and offered him a place in the Corps, a place where he could practice his craft in peace and be appreciated for it as head of the Smiths. He agreed and had been forging weapons and armor for the Corps since, a decision he has not regretted in the slightest. A tick mark appeared on Naruto's head at the nickname. He decided not to retort and pulled out a scroll. He channeled his chakra into it, and with a poof, 11 demonic weapons appeared on the floor between the two. More material," he said before picking up an axe. "I tell ya, demon weapons are made in two forms, brilliant or fucking terrible. I mean, look at this thing," he said holding up the axe. "Looks like some fucking hellbeast ate it, threw it up, swallowed it again, and then shit it out." He pointed out, "I mean, with angel weapons, ya, at least get a decent looking weapon, even if they're dainty as shite." Naruto simply stood there quietly. Hephaestus could talk for hours about the quality weapons and armor, and it was best not to interrupt a former god. The Forge Master then shrugged. "Ah well, at least they're good fair material." "Thanks, lad." Naruto nodded. Anytime he told the former Smith god before remembering he still needed to see Death. "Well, I've got to go see the boss. Take care, old man." Hephaestus nodded. "You too, lad." Naruto then turned and left, leaving the old smith to his work. The Withered Throne. Naruto walked into the throne room and saw Death hard at work. The Lord of Bones was sitting on a large stone throne with bones carved on it. The ends of the armrests were two large stone skulls. At the top of the throne was a demonic skull. Currently, the Grim Reaper was judging the soul of a shade in front of him. The shade was standing on a circular section of the floor, which was sunken into the floor, allowing Death to look down on it. The floor section was covered in small symbols carved into the floor. Like all shades, it had no defining features and left no way of telling who it once was. Its build, however, was obviously male. Death was currently glaring down at the quivering shade. "You have spent your entire life living off of the misery of others," he told the shade. "To satisfy your greed, you have committed unspeakable atrocities against your fellow men and women. Murder, theft, rape," he listed and then snarled. "And you have the gall to ask me for mercy? To the inferno with you! See your life as you truly lived." At these words, a portal opened under the shade's feet, radiating heat and echoing with the screams of the damned. He fell through it, screaming. The portal closed as quickly as it had opened. Death pinched the bridge of his nose. What a wasted life, he said tiredly. He then felt the presence and looked up. Ah, Naruto. Excellent timing. I was just finishing up with the last of the bandit clan you slaughtered, he told his servant. I trust this means resin has been dealt with? Naruto walked to his master and then kneeled. He has, master. Resin and his followers will trouble mankind no longer, he told Death. The head reaper grinned. Excellent. I knew you would be up to the task. I'm honored to serve, he said humbly. Death nodded. Speaking of serving, I have something to discuss with you, he told the blonde reaper before standing. Walk with me. Naruto stood and followed Death. The two stopped at a balcony overlooking the void. The realm certainly lived up to its name. The landscape was dominated by mountains and canyons, all a dull gray. The land was covered with bones and skeletons. Some were from creatures so large, they rivaled the mountains in sheer size. What looked like snow was raining down on them. In reality, it wasn't snow, but ash. Despite its bleakness, the view was astonishing. You picked a real peach of a world to settle down on, boss, Naruto told Death, humor present in his tone. Death shrugged, not minding the lack of formality. I like the quiet. The scenery isn't bad either. The two chuckled a bit, and were then silent for a few moments. Finally, Death broke the silence. It has been 4 human years since you've arrived here. In that time, you have trained and prepared. You have exceeded my expectations for you and are a proud member of the Corps. He paused for a bit before continuing. And now, the time has come for you to return to the life you left behind. Naruto quickly spun around and faced his master. It's finally time? He asked eagerly. Death nodded yes. The genin placements are coming up in Konoha, and you are more than ready. Naruto was now giddy with excitement. He had been waiting for this moment for years. Finally, he would be allowed to see his loved ones again. Not only that, but he could finally walk the streets of Konoha without fear. When do I leave? Naruto asked, barely containing himself. Tomorrow, Death answered. The exams are the day after you arrive, and arriving a day early will help you acclimatize to the village. Naruto nodded, understanding. I'll go prepare. Then he bowed and turned to leave when his master stopped him. Not so fast, Death said, causing Naruto to halt and turn to face him. There are a few things I'd like to address first for when you arrive. Firstly, no showing off your powers too much. I'd like you to keep a low profile for the time being. Only unleash your true power when the situation demands it. Naruto nodded, agreeing. Secondly, when you arrive, you will speak to the Sandaime, and tell him everything about what you have become, and what you do. Naruto's eyes widened. Everything? He asked skeptically. Everything. The core, our purpose, the existence of the supernatural, all of it, Death answered. Your duties as a Reaper will likely require you to take many leaves of absence from the village. The Hokage will need to authorize them, and for that, he must know exactly what is you do. Leaving the village without his consent will give the petulant fools on the council an excuse to brand you as a missing nin, he explained. The blonde Reaper nodded. I understand. He then smirked. The old man's gonna have a heart attack when he hears about this. Death chuckled. Yes, most likely. But it will no doubt be entertaining. He then became serious again. Thirdly, when you meet with him, you will have him hand over your inheritance. I will not have my representative on Earth living in a vermin-infested apartment complex. Naruto nodded again. He had learned about his parents, after his first 2 years in the void. His mother was Kushina Uzumaki and his father Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. Naruto had been furious at first, but Death soon calmed him down, explaining why his father had done what he did to him, for the safety of the village. He told the boy that his parents had loved him very much and had looked forward to meeting him. It took quite a bit of convincing, but he finally forgave his father, and vowed to make both of his parents proud. Death continued. Fourthly, you take you-know-who with you, he ordered. Naruto smirked. Why? She too much for you guys? He teased, knowing who he was talking about. She gets anxious enough when you leave on missions. Creator knows what she'll do if you go home without her, and I don't feel like having to deal with her rampaging through the palace, he told his subordinate. Naruto chuckled. Alright, I'll take her with me. It'll be good for her to stretch her legs for a bit. But won't people ask questions about her? He asked. You can tell people she's a type of summon or animal companion. The Inuzukas have their dogs, the Aburames have their insects, and you have her, he explained. Naruto laughed. She's a bit different from most pets, though. Death shrugged. Deal with it however you wish, but you can't leave her here. Everyone else is nervous enough as it is. Alright, whatever you say, boss, he said, still smiling. Good, the Reaper said before continuing. Finally, keep an eye on the advisor on the village council known as Danzo Shimura. He is a die-hard patriot, but I suspect he has dealings with a paranormal source. On a more personal note, he hates the Sandaime for holding the position he has desired for decades. His bitterness festers in him like an infected wound, and I suspect he'll take any opportunity to seize control. Like dealing with demons, Naruto said. The Reaper nodded. Precisely. Desperation and greed can make men do terrible things, he warned. But be warned, he has a great amount of influence in Konoha and Fire Country as a whole. If you move against him, he will use this against you. I have seen what lies within his black heart. He holds a desire to conquer the other nations, and, if he becomes Hokage, he will likely start a war that will consume the earth. Naruto was confused. I thought it wasn't our place to interfere in the affairs of humanity? Death nodded. It isn't. But you are going to be a shinobi of Konoha and will have to protect it from all threats, foreign and domestic. Danzo's reign will likely destroy Konoha and everyone in it, something I'm sure you wish to avoid. Do you want me to kill him? Naruto asked. Only if he has dealings with the forces of hell or others who seek to do humanity harm. May you kill him in the name of the core. Naruto was about to protest when Death spoke again. But if he shows his true colors and commits treason against Konoha, you, as a ninja, will be free to deal with him as you see fit. I advise caution. If you attack without proof, he will rally the village against you. My advice is to bring him down when you have sufficient evidence. Even then, be wary, he is more powerful than he appears, he warned. Naruto nodded. I understand, master, he said, before realizing something. He didn't know what the man looked like. What does he look like? He asked, voicing his mental question. Look for the one-eyed, one-armed old man staring at you like you're a prize to be won, he explained. Which reminds me, Danzo controls a private army of emotionless shinobi called Root, an organization that was outlawed by the Sandaime many years ago. He constantly seeks to bolster his forces and will see you as potential recruit and will likely try to kidnap and brainwash you into becoming his mindless weapon simply because you hold Kurama. Who knows what he'll do when he finds out what you can really do? Naruto's eyes narrowed. He would go that far? He asked. Death nodded. He already has. He tried to raise you in his Root division as a mindless tool, but the Sandaime stopped him, hoping to give you a proper childhood. Naruto began to hate this man, who he had never met before, and became even more grateful to the old Hokage for sparing him that fate. I understand, master. I will exercise the utmost caution, he said, bowing. Was there anything else? No, Death told him. You may leave and prepare for tomorrow. It will be a busy day for you. Meet me at the well tomorrow at noon. I will personally see you off, he ordered, referring to the room where all Reapers are transported to Earth. Naruto bowed again. By your leave, then. He then turned around and walked towards his quarters to prepare. Death sighed mentally and looked out upon the landscape. The journey ahead will be difficult for you, Naruto, he thought grimly. May my brother watch over you. Naruto's quarters, a few minutes later. Naruto closed the door to his room and sighed. His room was small, only large enough to accommodate his needs like all of the other living quarters in the palace. Naruto walked over to his bed and sat down on it. Something wrong, Kit? A voice in his mind asked. Normally, hearing voices in one's head was a sign of insanity, but Naruto was a special case. No, Kurama. Well, yes. I mean, I'm excited about going home, but on the other hand, he trailed off. You worry your loved ones will think less of you when they hear what you've done, the fox answered. Naruto nodded. Don't get me wrong, I'm proud of being a Reaper, but I've killed so many people. I know they deserved it, but still. Kit, listen to me, you are one of the bravest, wisest, and kindest souls I have ever met. Your precious people may be surprised after hearing your exploits, but I know they will never stop caring about you. You, the boy who brought so much light into their lives, the old fox said in a warm and reassuring tone. Naruto smiled a bit. Thanks, Kurama. I'm glad we're partners now. Kurama shook his head. Not partners, he corrected, friends. Naruto smiled even more at that. Over the last several years, Naruto had learned to communicate with his Biju. The two were not on friendly terms at the start, considering the fox was the reason Naruto's life had been so difficult. When the fox had explained to Naruto that he had been forced to attack the village and had once been imprisoned within his mother, Naruto eventually found it in his heart to forgive him. After knowing each other for years, the two were now close friends, and the fox even trusted his jailer enough to tell him his real name, Kurama. Naruto had even changed his mindscape into a vast forest and turned the cage into a collar, allowing Kurama to run free in his mind. Naruto then realized something. Oh shit, he suddenly said. What time is it? He asked before glancing up at the clock on the wall. Shit. It's getting late, I need to go feed Beatrice. He said as he got up, exited his room, and quickly made his way to the dungeon, where his pet was held. Kurama chuckled. Better hurry up, boy, he told his container in a humorous tone. You don't want her to smash her way through the palace, searching for something to eat or someone. Remembering what happened the last time he was late feeding his pet, Naruto moved faster. Kurama, meanwhile, was laughing at his panic before suddenly becoming sad. Friends, he thought to himself, remembering what he had said during their earlier conversation. Yes, just friends. The next morning, Naruto awoke from a rather pleasant dream. He couldn't remember much about it, but he did remember the smell of lavender. He heard Kurama laughing in his mind. "What's so funny?" he asked. "Oh, nothing. Nothing at all," the fox answered. Deciding to ignore his tenant, Naruto got dressed and headed down to the mess hall for something to eat. Just because most of the people here didn't need to eat, doesn't mean they don't like to. As he made his way there, Naruto noticed a lack of people moving through the palace. Normally, the palace was a very busy place, but now it seemed almost empty. Naruto felt a surge of power coming from Harvest. The blade was worried as well. "I know," he told his weapon, "this is weird." As Naruto opened the great doors to the mess hall, he was blasted by a loud chorus of surprise. Jumping in surprise, Naruto almost pulled out his weapon when he saw the sight before him. In the large room, nearly every member of the corps had gathered for some type of celebration, and they were all smiling at him. Nearly all members of all units were there, including Hephaestus, who towered over the rest, Io, the old inventor who leads the Maker's unit, the man known only as the Scribe who now leads the Scholars unit of the corps, and even Death himself. At last! A deep, baritone voice cried out, "The guest of honor has arrived." Naruto looked and saw a very large, though not as large as Hephaestus, muscular man wearing the standard cloak and hood of the corps, hiding his features. "Krummer-sensei?" Naruto asked, knowing who the man was, despite not being able to see his face. "What's going on?" "Isn't it obvious?" Another cloaked man with a British accent asked. "We're celebrating your return to life." "Polynus is correct," another man said in an accent one would find in some regions of Africa. "The spirits have declared this to be a day of joyous celebration," the reaper known as Zolam amended. "You didn't think we'd let you go without a party, did you?" Another cloaked figure, a woman this time, said in a light voice. This reaper was known as Sayora. "Your journey will be difficult. Before you embark, it is best you relax among friends and colleagues." The calm, thoughtful voice of the reaper Sharam spoke. Naruto was stunned and was as touched. "I don't know what to say," he told them all honestly. "Nothing needs to be said," another cloaked figure, another woman, spoke in a low voice, "except thank you perhaps." Sayora rolled her eyes behind her hood. "Way to kill the mood, Ryaza." "I fail to see how pointing out the obvious has killed the mood," Ryaza replied. Naruto looked upon the cloaked reapers who had spoken, his senseis for the past several years. "In any case," Death said interrupted, "your time with us has been memorable, and you have made friends among the corps. Friends who would wish you well and celebrate your resurrection." "Here, here!" Hephaestus called out. Death then spoke again. "We have a few hours before you depart, use them well." "To Naruto Uzumaki," Krummer said, holding up a mug of ale, "the obnoxious little bastard who's made us all proud." "To Naruto!" Everyone chorused at once. Said Blonde had never been happier as he looked out on the people who had become more than friends to him. More than comrades. They were his family. And he couldn't be happier. Hours later. After the celebration, Naruto was escorted to the well by his master and friends. The well was a large portal that would take the person who entered it wherever the user wanted. No one, except Death, knew how it worked, but no one could deny its usefulness. So Naruto said, "This is it." Death nodded. "Indeed, it is finally time," he answered, "but before you go, I have 2 more gifts to give you." Death held out a clawed hand and, in a swirl of dark energy, a scroll appeared in it. "You've done well in learning the first level techniques of dark release," he told his subordinate, "and now, I believe you are ready to learn the next few." He then handed the scroll to Naruto. The dark release bloodline was not a part of Naruto's family history. No one in his family tree had ever awakened it. This was because the bloodline didn't exist in his family. Naruto had gained the bloodline from Death. The bloodline was created generations ago and granted to a clan of humans by the Reaper, who believed they would use it for just purposes, which they did. However, in recent years, the clan began to die out, with the last member being murdered under mysterious circumstances. Seeking to reintroduce the power to a new clan, Death chose the last of the Uzumaki clan, Naruto Uzumaki, to bear his gift. He had only allowed Naruto to learn the 2 most basic techniques so far, Dark Release, Inhaling Ma, which allowed the user to absorb chakra, and spells, in Naruto's case, through their palms, even from Jutsu, and Dark Release, Judgment, which allowed the user to use the absorbed to launch blue flames back at the attacker to either burn or knock back with concussive force or, in Naruto's case, to be able to send the same attack back at the attacker. Normally, the use of Dark Release required a special brand to be placed into one or more of the user's palms, but Naruto was a special case, having received the bloodline from the source. Now, Naruto was being given the chance to learn even more. He couldn't wait. "Thank you, Master," Naruto said, bowing. "You're welcome," Death answered, "but I have one last gift for you." With another swirl of energy, a large ornate box appeared in the Lord of Bones' hands. "Well, actually it's from someone else, but I was asked to deliver it to you. Death then opened the box. Inside, laid gently in the center, was a cross. But this was no ordinary cross. It was silver in color, with gems encrusted into it. It was covered in strange runes. Naruto could feel the power radiating from it. This is a powerful relic, Death told the blonde, one of heaven's most cherished treasures. This is the crucifix. It contains limitless divine power. Power that comes from within it, from a thorn of Christ's crown of thorns. The blood of the Creator flows through it. Everyone in the room, besides Death, gawked in awe at the cross. Holy shit, Krummer whispered. Several people kneeled and began to pray, the highly religious Sharam included. Everyone else was silent. There were no words. Death continued, Naruto, you have been chosen to wield it. Everyone was even more shocked, but none more so than Naruto himself. Me? He asked after finally finding his voice. Why? I do not know, Death answered truthfully, nor do I know who sent it. It came with a message that told me to give it to you. The message contained the seal of the archangels. He then smiled. Apparently, you've made some friends upstairs. Naruto reached towards it with a trembling hand. He hesitates for a moment, and then grabs it gently and holds it up. He felt a strange sense of warmth flow through his body, a comforting feeling of peace and love. The blonde reaper gazed at the beautiful cross, in awe of it. What kind of power does it possess? He asked, looking up at his master. Holy power, he answers. The light it emits burns all evil creatures and causes unimaginable pain to them. Wicked souls burn at its touch. It fires holy energy at those it is directed towards, that only harming evil beings, Death explained, but its most powerful ability is the power to absolve any soul of all their sins. Even the most wicked of souls can be absolved by its holy light. Everyone was now even more astonished by this revelation. The power to absolve any sin. Only the Creator possessed this power. And now, so did Naruto. Other powers may reveal themselves in time. The message stated that you are to use it however you wish, as long as your intentions are good and just. But be warned, he told the blonde, you must only use the power of absolve on those who are worthy of redemption. Naruto nodded. I understand, master, he said, while inwardly vowing to be worthy of using it and to validate the trust of whoever had given him the crucifix. Also, Death said, stirring Naruto out of his thoughts, the crucifix has bonded to you in the same way Harvest has. None but you are able to use it. Naruto continued to stare at the relic before realizing something. How do I use it? He asked. In time, the crucifix will show you, his master answered. Naruto gave the relic one more glance before placing it in his coat, along with the scroll he had received. Thank you, master, he said to Death, bowing, and please tell whoever sent this thank you and assure them I will use the crucifix wisely. Death nodded. I will, he promised. A few moments of silence passed before Death spoke again. Well, it's about time for you to go. Naruto's friends gathered around to say their farewells. Good luck to you, boy, Krummer told him, giving him a powerful pat on the back. Show them what a real warrior can do. Naruto smiled and nodded. I will, Krummer, he promised. Fight with honor and valor, my friend, Paulinus told him. Always, Naruto vowed. Zolom then stepped forward. The spirits favor you, Naruto. Nevertheless, I wish you good fortune on your journey. Thank you, Zolom. Sayora then stepped forward and gave him a sisterly hug. Be safe, brother. Naruto returned the hug. You as well, sister. Sharam bowed in respect. I do not know what lies ahead of you, my friend, he said, but I know you will make us all proud. Naruto bowed in return. Ryaza then stepped forward. I'm not very good at this, but she then pulled him into a quick hug before backing away before Naruto could return it. Good luck, Naruto, she told him. Fight well. The others couldn't help but chuckle at her awkwardness. Hephaestus then lumbered forward. You take care o' yourself, ya hear me, lad? And you take even better care of that scythe of yours. I didn't forge it just so you could it up. Naruto smiled and nodded. I will, old man, and don't worry about Harvest. It's in good hands. Naruto then turned to his master and bowed. Thank you, master, for everything. Death smiled. It was my pleasure. Just remember that no matter what happens, you will always have a home here, he assured the blonde reaper. Naruto nodded and walked towards the well and looked down at the swirling vortex of energy. He turned to his family and gave them one last wave before leaping into the well, quickly disappearing. Creator favor you, young one, Death thought. Konoha. Naruto reappeared in a swirl of dark energy and looked around. He appeared to be in a deserted ally. Good, he thought. No witnesses to that little display. Naruto then unholstered Harvest and looked at it. Well, pal, time for you to blend in, he told his sentient weapon. The scythe quivered. Don't give me that, he told the protesting weapon. You're liable to scare the shit out of everyone who sees you and will likely draw attention to us, and we don't want that yet. Harvest relented and, in yet another swirl of energy, transformed into a meter-long scepter with a silver skull at the top. Naruto twirled the staff in his hand. There, he said. Was that so difficult? He asked. The scythe grumbled. Smiling, Naruto then pulled up his hood, concealing his face, and walked out of the alley. It was high noon in Konoha, with people moving through the streets performing their everyday tasks. Naruto noticed that he was in the market district, close to where he had been killed. Doesn't look like anything has changed, Kurama noted. Nope, just a normal, peaceful day in sunny Konohagakure, he thought before smirking for now. Kurama chuckled at this. Yes, just wait until everyone realizes that the demon brat has escaped death and has returned. Naruto laughed inwardly, imagining the villagers' reactions in response to his sudden return. He then looked towards the Hokage tower. Well, he thought, time to pay the old man a visit. Here's hoping he doesn't have a heart attack. And with that, Naruto began walking towards the tower, just another figure in the crowd. Hokage's office, the Hokage tower. Hiruzen Sarutobi was, normally, a very serious person. Renowned for his knowledge and skill, the Sandaime Hokage was respected by his people and feared by his enemies. Yet, unbeknownst to all except a select few, the old Kage did have one weakness. A weakness so crippling that, were it ever used against him, it would mean his absolute and total defeat. And that weakness was Ika. Yes, the famous/infamous Sandaime Hokage held a great weakness for the erotic novel series that his student, Jiraiya, had created. In the old man's humble opinion, no other work of literature could rival what his literary genius of a student had forged from the fires of his own imagination. He couldn't help but scoff at remembering that death had been supremely disappointed in the work of art. The current novel he was reading was a brand new addition to the series. He was about to get to the best part when... Working hard, I see. The Sandaime jumped out of his chair and looked around frantically for the source of the voice that had interrupted his reading. He heard chuckling and looked to the window, where a hooded figure holding a scepter of some kind was leaning up against the wall. Did I startle you? The hooded figure asked. The Sandaime calmed himself and fell into a fighting stance. Who are you? How did you get in here? He demanded. The figure clutched at his heart. Aji-san, I'm hurt, he said in a tone of mock emotional pain. Surely you still remember me after all these years. The figure then removed his hood. The old Kage was greeted by a familiar face, one that had spiky, blonde hair and blue eyes. At first, Hiruzen thought that this was the Yondaime, until he saw the whisker marks on his face. And Naruto? He asked. Naruto smiled. Yep. I'm back, old man. The Sandaime suddenly leapt over his desk and hugged the boy who he saw as a surrogate grandson, a hug which was returned. The two separated after a moment, and the old man looked over the blonde young man. I almost can't believe it, he said, but you're really here. Just like he said you would be. Naruto smiled. You mean death, yes? He asked. The old man looked surprised. Why the surprise, Gigi? He asked. Surely he told you he had made me an offer? An offer that I accepted? Why, yes, he did, the old Kage answered, and he told me you would tell me more when you returned, he told the blonde. Naruto smiled even more. You might want to have seat, old man, he told the Sandaime Hokage. This is gonna be a long story. Chapter 2, Questions and Revelations. The office of the Hokage was silent. Naruto Uzumaki had just finished telling the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, all there was about where he had been, what he had been doing, and what he was now a part of. The aged Hokage could only stare in disbelief. He had seen many incredible things in his many decades of life, but what the resurrected blonde had just told him defied reason and possibility. Demons, angels, monsters, spirits, and the undead? Heaven, hell, and other realms? A group of warriors, scientists, and others working to keep all of this, and more, a secret and keeping the human race safe from these things? It defied everything humanity knew about the universe. Naruto smiled at the shock on the old man's face. You're trying to wrap your head around this, he guessed. I know how you feel. I didn't believe it at first either. But I've seen these things, and more, with my own eyes. I can tell you, it's all real. Everything we were told as children was myth and legend is all true. The Sandaime finally managed to find his voice. So you say you're part of an organization that keeps the world safe from supernatural beings? He asked. Naruto nodded yes. The Reaper Corps is almost as old as the human race. For countless millennia, we have kept the world, and all who live on it, safe from the dark forces that would see them destroyed or enslaved, he explained. Like demons? The old man asked. Among other things, the blonde Reaper answered, but demons are the most common threat we face. They constantly seek to escape from hell and find it entertaining to cause as much chaos and death as they can. The old Kage was stunned. Demons walk the earth? Naruto nodded. How many? Naruto shrugged. Dozens. Maybe hundreds, he answered. And no one notices? Hiruzen asked. How? Possession. Demons claim the souls of humans and use them to enter a person's body, Naruto explained. They walk around in human skin and no one suspects a thing. The Sandaime looked troubled. Don't worry, old man. Demons can't take any soul by force. The old man was confused. Then how? Naruto interrupted. A person's soul is the one possession we can truly say is our own, he explained. It cannot be taken away from us. It must be given willingly. People give their souls away? The Sandaime asked, sickened by what he was hearing. Naruto shook his head. Not for free, no. Humans always ask for something in return. Demons entice mortals with deals, promising wealth, power, or whatever in exchange for their souls. Humanity, as a whole, only places value on things they can see, touch, taste, and feel. People go about their lives every day without thinking of their souls. In their minds, a soul has no meaning in life and life is all that matters, so why keep it? Why not trade it for something that is more material? Naruto then looked sad. Of course, it's only after the deal is finalized does the person realize their mistake. Demons use the victim's soul to amplify their own magical power and use it to collect on their end of the bargain. But everything they give always has a catch. The person may get what they want at first, but the deal always goes bad for the human and soon, they find themselves with less than what they had before. Before they realize it, their soul is in hell and something else is wearing their skin. Some don't even realize that they aren't in control of their actions anymore. Hiruzen was shocked that something so evil could happen without notice. But why? He asked. Why do demons do this? It's all they know, Naruto told him simply. Lucifer, the Lord of Hell, despises us as much as he does the Creator and ensures that all demons are taught to hate us as well. Wait, you said that heaven and hell have a truce, that they aren't allowed to intervene in our affairs. How do the demons get away with this? The Sandaime asked. Lucifer claims that the demons that escape to Earth are acting against his wishes and that his subjects are acting on their own behalf, Naruto told him before continuing. That's mostly true, he doesn't actively encourage them, but he doesn't stop them either. Thus, the balance is, technically, unbroken. But if the demons rule hell, why do they wish to escape it? It's a prison, Naruto answered simply. They may be the wardens, but they also serve life sentences, just like the souls of the damned, and they don't age like we do. They can live a long time. Some demons have enough power and influence to the point that they have no desire to leave. But most are unsatisfied with their place in the inferno and constantly seek to escape it. Is possessing humans the only way they can escape? The Sandaime asked, growing more and more concerned with this new, hidden threat. Naruto shook his head. No, there are other ways, but they seldom work. Sometimes demons attempt to blind jump into some random being on Earth. They get stuck in inanimate objects, or things like trees or wild animals. What happens to them then? Well, inanimate objects tend to harness the demon's power, turning it into an item of power. I personally wouldn't use the item, as the trapped demon's hatred of humans tend to cause the wielder to be cursed. Trees and animals, well, he paused for a moment before continuing, they mutate into horrific monsters. The process rips away all sanity from them and causes them to mindlessly attack anything and anyone around them in a blind rage. Naruto continued. Other than that, the only other way I know of is if they are summoned by an outside force, another demon or some human who seeks to control them. The latter case never works out. The summoned demon just kills the summoner, and is free to rampage across the world. The Sandaime was even more troubled after hearing this. Humans can summon demons? He asked. Naruto nodded. How? Magic, Naruto answered like it was the simplest thing in the world. Magic? The Sandaime asked, bewildered. Magic exists? And humans can use it? Naruto chuckled. Of course, he said. Shinobi use it all the time. He saw the confused look on the old Kage's face. He elaborated. When you breath fire or summon a wall of stone, what do you think it is you're doing? He asked. Using chakra, the Sandaime answered. And what do you think chakra is? A natural energy that exists in all of us. Naruto nodded. A natural magical energy that exists in all of us, he corrected before continuing. The Sage of Six Paths was the first to unlock this energy, and soon taught others how to do the same. As the generations passed, humanity inherited this power from their ancestors and now, all of us possess the ability to use it. The Sandaime was shocked. Wait, he started. You're saying that magic, something we were told was pure fiction, is not only real but we've been using it for well over 1,000 years? Naruto laughed. Yep. The sage knew that people would panic if they learned that they were using magic, so he told them only half of the truth, that we were using a natural energy that exists inside us all. He left out the part that energy was magical in nature, he explained. A few moments passed in silence, as Naruto let Hiruzen contemplate all of this. After a few more moments, Naruto decided break the silence. So he began, now that I've answered some of your questions, what say you answer some of mine? The Sandaime was brought out of his daze. What? Oh yes. Of course. Ask away, he said, gesturing for the blonde to continue. Good, Naruto said. Firstly, when exactly were you going to tell me about the QB being sealed inside me? He asked calmly. The old Kage began to panic. Or were you never going to tell me at all? Naruto interrupted. And don't insult me by telling me you don't know what I'm talking about. The Sandaime sighed. How did you find out? He asked. Death told me the day I died, Naruto answered, and you still haven't answered my question. I was planning to tell you the day you became a shinobi, he answered, along with. The old man stopped himself, almost revealing the village's greatest secret. Along with who my parents were? Naruto asked, finishing the Sandaime's sentence. The Hokage's eyes widened. You know? He asked. About what? That my mother was Kushina Uzumaki and my father was Minato Namikaze. No, I haven't the slightest goddamn clue, Naruto said in a bitter and sarcastic tone before glaring. Of course I know. What I don't know is why you never told me. Was I to be condemned to living in that rat-infested apartment complex instead of my parents' mansion? Was I supposed to spend every moment of my life wondering who my parents were and whether they loved me or not? Was that what you wanted? The Sandaime noticed the menacing tone Naruto was beginning to take. No, the old man argued. Of course not. I would have told you. It's just, he paused before continuing. Naruto, you have to understand, your parents made many enemies in the last war. Enemies who would have stopped at nothing to take their revenge on them through you. IWA would have tried to kill you the second they knew. You could have told me at least. I could have kept it a secret, Naruto argued, still calm, but with a menacing tone. I wanted to, Naruto, I truly did, but you were young and impulsive, the Sandaime told him. I was worried you would tell everyone to get back at the villagers. I couldn't afford to take that risk. I was going to tell you the day you graduated from the academy, but that never happened. He looked Naruto in the eyes. The blonde saw the sadness in them. Naruto, the old man continued, when you died, I regretted so many things. But not telling you about the Kyuubi and your parents, those were the regrets that weighed most heavily upon my mind. Naruto stared at the old Hokage for a moment. I know, he finally said, I was angry when I was first told what you kept from me, but I got over it. I forgave you a long time ago, he smiled slightly. I just needed to see it in your eyes, that you regretted it. The Sandaime sighed in relief. Thank God, he said, I was so worried you would hate me for not telling you the truth. For keeping you in the dark for all these years, he confessed. Naruto smiled wider. Not my style. You, of all people, should know that, he told his grandfather figure. Hiruzen chuckled. Yes, I suppose I should have, he admitted. The two laughed for a moment before Naruto remembered something. Speaking of the Kyuubi, he started, you should know that the attack on the village was no accident. Someone unleashed the fox upon the village, he told the old Kage. The Hokage's eyes widened. Someone dash. But who? And how? I don't know who he is, but I know what he is. What do you mean? The man that unleashed the Kyuubi upon the village wore a mask with a single eye hole. But within that hole was a Sharingan eye, he finished. The Sandaime's eyes widened even more. An Uchiha? He asked. Yes, Naruto told him, one who is still alive. What? The old man asked, shocked even more than before, but the entire clan was slaughtered by Itachi. He claimed, only he and Sasuke survived, and I know Itachi's eyes wouldn't have been strong enough to use on the fox. Naruto nodded. I know, but death showed me the memories of what happened that night. I've seen the man in question and his eye. It was an Uchiha, one that either escaped the massacre or one who was a Rouge ninja. The Sandaime pondered this for a moment before continuing. I know for a fact that none but Itachi and Sasuke survived the massacre. All the other members were accounted for. I also know there aren't any known Uchiha missing besides Itachi. He thought for a moment before asking, you say you don't know who he is? Naruto shook his head. No, I don't. Death knows, but he won't tell me. He probably thinks I'll try to hunt him down, he said. I probably would, he admitted. The Sandaime pondered. I'll have to have our spies try to find out more. Won't be easy though, it's been 15 years. The trail will have gone cold by now, he said, mostly to himself. I should also let you know, the Kyuubi was forced to attack the village and is a pretty nice guy when you get to know him. Hiruzen looked up in shock. You can communicate with it? He asked. Naruto corrected, and yes, I can. We've become partners and friends over the years. You have nothing to worry about in that department, he assured the Sandaime. The aged Hokage stared at the boy for a moment, skeptically, before responding. All right, he said, I'll trust your judgment. But you should keep the fact that you can to speak to him, he corrected, from everyone else for now. People will be nervous enough that you've returned from the dead. They don't need any more reason to fear and hate you. Naruto nodded. Fair enough, he said before remembering something else. Also, death wants you to turn over my inheritance to me. All of it, he told the old man seriously. The Sandaime was about to argue when Naruto interrupted again. If you're going to say something about me not being ready or that I'll be in danger, save it. Death is confident that I can take care of myself, and so am I, he told him. Ryuzan was about to argue again but decided not to. If the Shinigami believed that he was ready, then who was he to argue? Alright Naruto, he sighed before standing up. He walked over to a portrait of the yondaime on the wall and pressed a hidden button on its frame. The portrait swung open, revealing a safe behind it. After using the combination, the old Kage opened the safe and retrieved the contents, and closed it. He then walked back to his desk, sat down, and handed Naruto a pair of scrolls. These scrolls contain all you need to prove you are indeed the heir to the yondaime and the Uzumaki clan. The first is the deed to your parents' manor, and the second contains your birth certificate and your parents' last will and testament, in which they left everything to you, he told the blonde. When we're done here, I'll take you to your parents' home. Naruto nodded, taking the scrolls. Thanks, old man. The sandaime nodded. Does the rest of the village know who I am? He asked. They do, he answered. After your death, I gathered the entire village and told them who they had hated and tortured all these years. They were quite shocked, to say the least. He then frowned. Most refused to believe me, though, crying out that it was impossible. Some believed me, though very few of them feel guilty about what they did to you. They believe you stopped being human after the fox was sealed into you. He shook his head. The fools. Naruto thought on this. So the whole village knew, but they still refused to take responsibility for their actions. He mentally sighed. He should have known it wouldn't be easy. I suppose it was too much to ask that they get over their hatred, he sighed, then became serious. I want you to understand something, old man. I will not let the villagers push me around anymore. If they attack me, I will use lethal force if necessary, he warned darkly. The sandaime sighed. I know, and you have every right to do so. Very well. If you are attacked, I give you permission to defend yourself and use lethal force, if necessary, he conceded. Naruto nodded. Good. After a moment, he spoke again. I still have more questions for you, old man, he pointed out. Of course, the sandaime said. Ask away. How are my friends? He asked before hesitating. Do they know that I was going to return? Was my death hard on them? He asked nervously. They were, understandably, upset when I told them, he answered, but they cheered up somewhat when I told them you'd be returning. I told them you'd come back, but I left death out of it. They would have thought I was crazy otherwise. I'm not entirely sure they believed what I told them, but you'll be able to remove any doubts they may still have, I'm sure, he said, smiling. He then continued. As for the first part of your question, they are all quite fine, he assured the blonde reaper. Iruka still teaches at the academy, and the Ichirakas still have their stand, though they don't see as much business since the disappearance of their number one customer. Naruto smiled. What about Hinata-chan? He asked. She is well, the sandaime answered. She took your death the hardest. She wouldn't eat or talk to anyone, she just stayed in her room and slept all day, even after I told her you would be returning. I don't think she believed me in the slightest. Naruto felt horrible. He didn't mean to cause his closest friend so much pain. He would have to make it up to her. Maybe with a whole bunch of cinnamon rolls, those were always her favorite. The sandaime continued. After a week of this, she emerged and promised to become stronger for you. She vowed to honor your memory by becoming the best kunoichi she could be, he explained. Most of her shyness is gone, but she still stutters a bit when she's nervous. Naruto smiled, happy his friend was becoming stronger and more confident. Her strength and confidence aren't the only part of her that's changed, though, the sandaime said cryptically. Now it was Naruto's turn to be confused. What do you mean? He asked. Hiruzen chuckled. Let's just say that she draws a great deal of attention from the male population of the village. She, Ino Yamanaka, and Sakura Haruno are tied in being the most attractive girls in their age group, he explained. Naruto was surprised. He always thought Hinata was cute but beautiful. Had she really changed that much? Hiruzen noticed Naruto deep in thought and chuckled. You'll see what I mean when you see her, he said. Naruto shrugged. If you say so. He then decided to ask one more question. One last question. Death told me the man who murdered me never passed through the void. What happened to him? He asked. The sandaime frowned, remembering the foolish former ANBU that caused all of this. His name is Tamatsu Higurashi, and he is still alive. We had him severely tortured and locked away. He clenched his fists. He took it all with a smile on his face. He was happy to that he had avenged his late wife and didn't care what we did to him. He doesn't even care that his daughter has been forced to live on her own for all these years, he said, angrily. He has a daughter? Naruto asked. The sandaime nodded. Yes. She's a year older than you. After her mother's death, her father became distant and started drinking. He abused her, telling her she had no right to look like her mother, like she was rubbing in the fact that she was dead. He became even angrier. When I told him he would never see her again, he had the nerve to say, who cares? Every day, I wake up with the desire to kill him. Maybe I should. What happened to the daughter? Naruto asked. She became a kunoichi a little less than a year ago. He then smiled. She has friends now and is very strong. She has left her past behind her. Naruto smiled. Good, he thought, she deserves to be happy and free of that piece of shit. Maybe I'll meet her someday. I still can't stand the fact that he won't stop smiling after he killed you, the old Kage growled out. Naruto stared at him for a moment, and then smiled wickedly. Maybe I can do something about that, he told the old man. The Sandaime was confused. What do you mean? Naruto's smile widened even more. If he's so happy about me being gone, imagine what he'll do when he realizes that his efforts were all in vain. The Sandaime started to grin, understanding what the blonde reaper was implying. It would shatter his entire world. He said he would be left to rot in prison with no hope of ever escaping and finishing what he started. He realized. Exactly, Naruto answered, smirking. Well then, the Sandaime grinned darkly. I suppose we'll have to schedule an appointment as soon as possible. How about after we're done? Naruto suggested. The old man nodded. Sounds good to me, he conceded before asking, did you have any other questions? Or can I ask a few more? Naruto gestured for him to continue. You told me before that you had received a bloodline from death. May I ask what it is? Naruto nodded. It's called Dark Release, Naruto began. Death created it, and gave a small shinobi clan the ability to use it. It mostly focuses on absorbing a foe's chakra and turning it against them. I've heard of this bloodline before, the Sandaime said. I thought it died out years ago, after the last war. It did, Naruto told him. The clan's numbers had been dwindling over the past few years. Most were killed during the war. The last user was murdered a few years ago, though we still don't know who did it. Why did death give you the power to use it? The old man asked. Naruto shrugged. I don't know, he answered honestly. Maybe he thought the Uzumaki clan would be able to use it justly. Maybe he wants to see if I can master it. Who knows? How well can you use it? The Sandaime asked, intrigued. I can absorb and redirect simple attacks. That's about it, he answered. The more complicated and powerful the jutsu, the more difficulty I have in absorbing and redirecting it. Death gave me a scroll to learn more powerful techniques before I arrived here, but it'll probably take a while to learn all of them. The Sandaime was quiet for a moment, contemplating this. You know what will happen when the council finds out about this, don't you? He asked. Naruto nodded. They'll try to make me agree to the Clan Restoration Act. I'll have to marry multiple women and have many children to restore the Uzumaki clan for the betterment of Konoha, blah blah blah. Patriotic bullshit nonsense, he said in a tone like he had repeated this explanation countless times before. The Sandaime chuckled a bit at this. What will you tell them? He asked. Fuck off? Naruto suggested. Hiruzen laughed. Somehow I doubt that will work. They hear that answer regularly. They both laughed for a moment. Seriously though, if I do got through with it, I choose who I'll marry, not them, understood? The old Kage nodded. I expected as much, but I'll bet some members will have their daughters try to win your heart. Naturally, Naruto said simply, but I'm pretty good at detecting bullshit. They won't succeed, he vowed. I believe you, the Sandaime said, but enough about that, I have further questions. By all means, Naruto said, gesturing for him to go on. What exactly were you trained in over the last few years? A wide variety of things, Naruto answered. Weapon handling, marksmanship, tracking, stealth, occult knowledge, a few jutsu, and a bit of magic among other things. A lot of the time, though, I spent learning how to use this. He held out his scepter and, in a swirl of dark energy, it transformed into the largest, most brutal-looking scythe the Sandaime had ever seen. Hiruzen jumped back a bit in surprise. What is that? He demanded. Naruto smirked. Scary, isn't it? This is Harvest, the weapon I took from the Reaper that arranged my premature death, he told the old man. It is a sentient weapon, one that responds only to my touch. Only I can use it. It has 4 forms: the scepter, which you saw, the scythe, the blade then swung upward, the spear. In another swirl of dark energy, it transformed into an arm blade, and the arm blade, he stated, before the weapon transformed into a scythe again. It's also quite flexible, and its reach is longer than it looks. It can also function as a grapple when it needs to. Before the Sandaime could say anything, Naruto continued, and just today, I was given this, he said, pulling something out of his coat and placed it on the desk. It was a cross, the most beautiful cross he had ever seen. The crucifix, he said, one of heaven's most holy artifacts, the blood of the Creator himself powers it. It has the power to burn the wicked and absolve any soul of their sins. The old Kage stared in awe at the cross on his desk, words unable to leave his lips. I'm not sure who sent it to me, but it blew my mind when I found out what it was. I don't know how to use it yet, but I hope to find out soon. He then placed the crucifix back into his coat. Shaking himself out of his shock after a few minutes of silence, the Sandaime spoke. What? He cleared his throat and continued. What would you say your current skill level is? He asked. Naruto thought for a moment before answering. I can defeat nearly any genin and chunin and can hold my own against most jonin. He explained. The Sandaime was surprised. after only 4 years? He asked, amazed at the blonde's progress. Time passes differently in the void, Naruto told him. 4 years passed on Earth, but twice that many passed in the void. The Sandaime quickly did the math. 8 years? You spent 8 years training? Naruto nodded. Okay then, Hiruzen said. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. You accepted that pretty quickly, he pointed out. After everything you've told me, that was easy to digest. Naruto couldn't help but agree, now that he thought about it. Despite my progress, he began, I've yet to unlock the full power all Reapers are given, the Reaper form. Reaper form? The Sandaime asked, what is that? Naruto was silent for a moment, trying to find a way to explain it. It's like a transformation jutsu that you can shift in and out of at will without hand signs, and it's a real transformation, not an illusion, he explained. The user's body changes dramatically, increasing their powers immensely while also granting them new ones. Every Reaper has a different form, and we don't find out what it is until we unlock it. Have you ever seen someone use it before? The Sandaime asked. A few times. It's both amazing and terrifying, Naruto told him. How close are you to unlocking yours? Naruto shrugged, no clue. I've been told that it happens when the person is ready or are under dire circumstances, he said. Honestly, before continuing could take years, maybe even decades to unlock. So it could happen at any time? The Sandaime asked, worried that the villagers would use this to prove he was some sort of monster or demon. Pretty much. But like I said, it usually happens when a Reaper is in extreme danger. I see, the Sandaime said, pondering on this new development before speaking again. If you do unlock it, I suggest you show it only to those you trust or when the situation demands it. We don't need more flack for the villagers to use against you. Naruto nodded, agreed. Next question, the Sandaime continued. What is that tattoo on your wrist? Naruto looked at the mark under his left wrist. Saw that, did you? He asked before continuing. It's not really a tattoo, it's a summoning seal, he explained. For what? The aged Hokage asked. Naruto grinned and held out his arm. Suddenly, the seal started to glow, and something emerged from it. It was small, barely larger than a person's hand. It had only a handful of features, the most predominant of which was the large eye that took up most of its form. A long, spine-like tail protruded from its body with a few tendrils around it. The strange creature snaked around Naruto's arm and floated off of the ground, flying around the room before stopping next to its master's head, staring at the old Kage through its eye. This is an oculus, Naruto explained, patting the creature on the head. Think of it as a third eye. I can see everything it sees and it can travel anywhere undetected. All Reapers have one. We use them for reconnaissance and information gathering, mostly. Hiruzen stared at the oculus, and it stared back. Cautiously, he reached out to touch it. The oculus floated away from his hand. Sorry, it generally doesn't like being touched, Naruto explained. The Sandaime stared at it for a moment before speaking. You can see everything it does? He asked, still staring at the bizarre floating eye. Naruto nodded. The old man placed his hands under his desk and out of Naruto's sight. How many fingers am I holding up? He asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Really? He asked. Just do it, please. Naruto sighed. The oculus floated around the desk and looked underneath it. The blonde looked the Kage right in the eyes and said, 9. How about now? 3. And now? 5, 8, 6, 2, 4, 1, he said, saying each number as the old man changed the number of fingers he was holding up, all while looking directly into his eyes. Amazing, the Sandaime said as he watched the oculus float back to its master. You said it was used for reconnaissance? He asked. Naruto nodded. I know it's small, but how can a floating eye not gain people's attention? Naruto smirked. Like this, he said. Suddenly, the eye disappeared. What the dash? How? The old Kage asked. Invisibility, Naruto explained, but that's just the fist ability it possesses. It can also move through walls and merge with another person, which allows me to see through that person's eyes. He then began to straighten his hair. Damn, I really do look like my dad, don't I? He asked, looking at the Sandaime like he was a mirror. The Sandaime shut his eyes tightly, cutting off the oculus's vision. Ah, come on, old man, Naruto whined. Take a joke for once. Little bastard, Hiruzen grumbled to himself, mentally. I take exception to that, Naruto said. I'm not little. The Sandaime's eyes shot open. How did you dash? Know what you were thinking. Naruto finished, smirking. When the oculus merges with another, not only can I see through their eyes, I can also hear and see into their mind, though only a small amount. It's not as powerful as, say, the Yamanaka clan techniques, but it's useful enough, he explained. In addition, I can give the person the oculus is attached to a small push to make them remember something I need to know or to perform simple actions. Like what? Looking at certain objects, reading certain documents, that sort of thing. Nothing too complicated, though, Naruto explained. Does it have any drawbacks? The Sandaime asked. Well, it can only see into another's mind if that person is caught unaware, Naruto explained. If the person knows it's there, like you do, they mentally brace themselves unconsciously and I can't hear what they're thinking or influence their actions. Also, the stronger the person's will is, the more difficult it is to influence their actions and thoughts. Other than that, no. Even if the oculus is discovered and destroyed, it will reform after a few minutes back inside the seal, he said before the floating eye flew back into the seal. Hiruzen contemplated this, before continuing. One last question, he began. You said that the Reaper Core keeps all of what you've told me hidden? Naruto nodded. Why all the secrecy? Surely people are intelligent enough to handle it. Naruto snorted. A person might be able to handle it, he explained. People, as a whole, are dumb, paranoid, violent animals who are easily panicked. If humanity had even the slightest idea, any definitive proof, that we aren't alone in creation, the panic would be catastrophic. The Sandaime was confused. I don't understand. Don't underdash. Naruto quickly stopped himself from getting upset. He took a deep breath and continued. People are fragile, he began, like glass, not physically, but mentally. Too much pressure, and they shatter. We don't handle change well, we fear it. Things that are different terrify us. For so long, we thought we were alone on this world. When they first discovered the summons, our ancestors believed them to be monsters. It took centuries before we finally grew used to the idea of other intelligent creatures sharing our world with us. When the tailed beasts first appeared, humanity was terrified of them. We thought they were demons sent to destroy our world. We still fear them. We keep them locked away in human containers, not only to harness their strength, but to keep us safe as well. And yet, despite the fact that neither summons nor tailed beasts mean us harm, we still fear them. Now, he continued, imagine what would happen if humanity, as a whole, discovered that there were a race of beings bred for the sole purpose of destroying everything around them, starting with us. Imagine what they would do if they knew that these creatures could walk among us, completely undetected, ready to strike when we least suspect it. They would panic, the Sandaime answered. Panic? Naruto asked. They would lose their collective shit. People would constantly be looking over their shoulders, constantly worried about being attacked by things out of their worst nightmares. To make things worse, since most humans have no way of detecting possession, people would view any odd behavior, even the slightest abnormality, as a symptom of possession. Manhunts, massacres, and executions all around. Countless centuries ago, people were burned as witches for odd appearances or behavior. Imagine that, times 1,000, then you have some general idea of what people would do if they knew about what we keep from them. Hiruzen thought on this and realized that the blonde was right, people would panic. Even Jinchuriki were treated as monsters even though anyone with a brain stem could see that they were human. If the world found out about demons and monsters, the chaos that would be caused was unthinkable. There was just one thing he didn't understand. What about angels? The Sandaime asked. They do not seek to destroy us, why keep them a secret? Naruto scoffed. You think that matters? Humanity sees things that are different and difficult to comprehend as monsters or threats. Angels are more powerful than we are. How long do you think it would take for the human race to decide they're a threat to us? Months? Years? It doesn't matter, conflict would be inevitable. Not to mention the religious panic that would follow should the angels and demons reveal themselves. Religious panic? The old Hokage asked. Naruto nodded. There are countless faiths and beliefs in the world. They are all different and unique, but they each have one thing in common. There is no definitive proof of who is right and who is wrong. But all of the followers of those beliefs follow them and believe in them without question, the Sandaime interjected. Naruto shook his head. I said there was no definitive proof, he corrected. People can look at relics and texts that have no purpose and see them as proof, but none of them can be proven or disproven. What do angels and demons have to do with this? The old man asked. Think about it. If the beings we knew from legends and myths turned out to be real, people would believe their faith to be the right one. Humans hate when others do not follow their customs and beliefs. This would be all they needed to conduct a crusade against non-believers. It would start out simple at first, a few attempts at conversion here or there, but as time goes on, the fanatical believers would lose their patience and lead attacks against heretics. Do you see where I'm going with this? Or do I have to elaborate further? No, that's quite all right. I see your point, the Sandaime answered, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. Naruto nodded. Good. Now you see why everything we know is kept a secret from the rest of humanity. It's for their own good. We keep them safe without their knowledge. Ignorance may not be bliss, but it's better than the alternative. Everything was silent after that, Naruto giving the old man time to think on all of this. After a while, the Sandaime finally spoke. Well, he said, that was overwhelming. Naruto laughed. Imagine having to see all of it. I'm trying not to, Hiruzen said, smiling. Now I do believe it's time to ruin a certain prisoner's day. Naruto smirked wickedly. Indeed, I've waited a long time for this. As the two prepared to set out, Naruto remembered something. Oh, one last thing, he said. My job as a Reaper will require me to leave the village to complete different missions. Assuming I become a shinobi, I'll need your approval to leave the village in order to fulfill my commitment to the core, he explained. The Sandaime thought for a moment before nodding. Very well, though I dislike the thought of you fighting monsters and God knows what else, I will grant you leave from the village as you need it. Naruto smiled. Thanks, old man. But the Kyuubi Jinchuriki leaving the village under mysterious circumstances will raise many questions among the council. What should I tell them? He asked. Naruto shrugged after he pulled his hood up again. You're the professor, I'm sure you'll think of something. Oh, thanks, the old man said sarcastically as they departed. Konoha Maximum Security Prison, Isolation Wing. The prison in Konoha was reserved for the most dangerous criminals in Fire Country that could be kept alive. People who had committed heinous enough crimes to need a more secure prison to place them, but not enough to warrant immediate execution. The prisoners in the Isolation Wing were the worst of the lot, those who were dangerous enough to need to be isolated from the other prisoners. Or simply to be punished for whatever reason. In one of these cells was one Tamatsu Higurashi, and he was one of these few, chained to the wall in his cell. The years had not been kind to the former ANBU captain. He was covered in scars, burn marks, etc. Still, he couldn't be happier. The Kyuubi was dead and his wife's soul was finally at rest. I mean, sure, freedom would have been nice, considering he hadn't seen the sun in over 4 years, but, all things considered, things weren't too bad. The senile idiot that was the Hokage had tried to break him, but he failed. He had survived the war, the Kyuubi attack, and his wife's death. A bit of torture wouldn't change that. Little did he realize that his incarceration was about to finally become intolerable. Normally things were quiet, so he jumped slightly when a voice spoke up. Tamatsu Higurashi. He looked up and saw a hooded figure standing just outside his cell. His unexpected visitor continued to speak. What a sad hand life has dealt you. You survived the Third Shinobi World War and the Kyuubi's attack, yet wind up here, doomed to spend the rest of your life rotting in this cell, assuming the Hokage doesn't decide to up and have you executed, the visitor said, walking closer to his cell. Tamatsu looked at the hooded stranger and scoffed. And who are you supposed to be? Another expert the old fool sent to break me? He asked mockingly. I'm here of my own volition. I was not sent by anyone, the stranger answered before continuing, but I'm not here to talk about me. No, I'm here to talk about you and what you've done. Tamatsu scoffed again. What's there to talk about? I killed the Kyuubi. That's it. End of story. Oh, but there is so much more to the story than that, the hooded man said as he began to pace back and forth in front of the prisoner, hands behind his back. Such a tale of heartbreak yours is. A man who meets the love of his life, marries her, and has a child with her. It seemed that you would live happily ever after together. But then, tragedy struck, when the Kyuubi, the great nine-tailed fox, appeared in the village and started to tear everything apart. Of course, as a shinobi of Konoha, you were summoned to fight. But you were defeated and discovered that your beloved was dead, killed in action against the fox. With your greatest reason for living gone, you wasted away in bars, attempting to drink away your pain. He then stopped and looked at the former ANBU captain. But that didn't work, did it? No amount of alcohol could drown your sorrow. Tamatsu glared at the hooded man. Is there a point to this? He asked, beginning to become angry at his visitor reciting his life story. We'll get to that. Now, where was I? He asked, rhetorically, before continuing. Oh yes. So, 11 years of this pass. 11 years of drinking, moping, and abusing your daughter, your anger boiling up inside you over being unable to avenge your late wife. So, one day, you decide to take action. You drug your fellow ANBU and, with the ANBU who supported you and a mob of simple-minded villagers, you go after Naruto Uzumaki, the boy who held the Kyuubi within him. He didn't hold the Kyuubi, he was the Kyuubi. Tamatsu snarled. The hooded man chuckled. Of course, whatever it takes to rationalize your actions. Anyway, you catch the boy and, after a moment of gloating, slit his throat. As he lays dying, another ANBU shows up and renders you unconscious. Then the Hokage shows up and slaughters the entire mob except for you. He decides to lock you away, and now, 4 years later, here we are, the hooded man said as he stopped pacing. What's your point? Tamatsu asked. I'm wondering why a man who will be spending the rest of his life, alone in this dark and dreary place, is so chipper. The former ANBU captain grinned. Because I won, he explained. I avenged my wife, and nothing that senile fool who calls himself Hokage does will change that. What of your daughter? The hooded stranger asked. Would you condemn her to live a life without both of her parents? I never wanted a kid, my wife did, he explained. I could care less about her or what she thinks about me. Interesting, the stranger said as he thought for a moment. He then looked at the prisoner again. And your wife? He asked. What about her? Do you think she would condone your actions? Would she have wanted you to kill an innocent child in her name? He was a demon, not a child, Tamatsu corrected angrily, And yes, I think she would have. She would be proud that I killed the monster that nearly destroyed the village," he proclaimed. "Are you so certain?" the man asked. "Absolutely," Tamatsu answered, "but I don't see how any of this matters. My wife is dead, it's not like I can ask her." "I wouldn't be so sure of that." The hooded man had spoken again, but instead of coming from directly in front of him, outside of his cell, it came from right next to him, inside the cell. He turned to his left, and saw the hooded man sitting right next to him. He looked back at where the man was standing before and then back at where he was now. "What? How the hell did he dash?" "Let's hear her opinion on the matter, shall we?" the hooded man continued. He then raised one of his hands and snapped his fingers. Suddenly a swirl of energy appeared outside of the cell and began to take shape. It took the form of a beautiful young woman with long, brown hair and eyes. A woman Tamatsu knew all too well, seeing as it had haunted his dreams and nightmares for the past 15 years. A woman he never thought he would see alive again. It can't be. For a few moments all he could do was stare. "Masami-heim?" he finally asked weakly. "Tamatsu-kun," the woman answered, her voice having an echo to it. She seemed happy to see him at first. She then became saddened. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you have to do it? Why did you have to murder that poor boy?" "I don't, but I thought," the prisoner tried to answer the apparition of his deceased wife. "I never wanted revenge," she told him. "All I ever wanted was to have nice, quiet life with you and our daughter. When I couldn't have that, I wanted you and our little girl to live a happy and full life." She then looked to be on the verge of tears. "But I watched as you drank yourself to sleep every night, and as you hid our child." Indeed, the hooded man spoke again, who was, somehow, now outside of the cell again, standing next to Masami's ghost. "Tell her why you did it, Tamatsu. Tell her how you abused your own flesh and blood because what was it you said?" "Oh yes, she had no right to look like her mother," the hooded man said, with the prisoner trying to kill him with his glare alone. Masami looked heartbroken. "Please tell me that isn't true," she pleaded. "You don't understand," Tamatsu said, his voice breaking. "You were my whole world, Masami. You were my life," he explained. "When you died, I didn't know what to do, my reason for living was gone. Every time I looked at our child it was like the universe was mocking me. I couldn't." "And that justifies beating your daughter?" the hooded man asked, interrupting the former ANBU captain, before scoffing. "A weak excuse from a weak man. She is the offspring of you and your wife. Of course she looks like her mother." "Shut up," Tamatsu growled. The hooded stranger ignored him. "Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say, not even 5 minutes ago, that you never wanted a child? That you only impregnated your poor wife because she wanted to have a family?" "I said shut up," Tamatsu ordered. Any further conversation was stopped by the sound of sobbing. Both looked to see Masami weeping into her hands. "Masami," Tamatsu said, trying to console his deceased wife, "I didn't dash." "Mean it?" the hooded stranger asked/finished, before continuing. "But you did. You meant every word. Clearly it was you who should have died that day. This poor woman deserved life far more than you do." Masami then spoke up, looking up at the hooded man, eyes red and puffy, tears staining her cheeks. "I don't want to be here anymore," she said, her voice broken. The hooded man looked at her and nodded. "Very well then, return to rest, Masami Higurashi." And with a wave of his hand, the woman vanished. "No!" Tamatsu shouted. "Come back. Please! I'm sorry!" he pleaded. "It's too late," the hooded man said. "Her spirit has returned to paradise, and unless I summon her again, which I won't, you are unlikely to ever see her again." "What? You murdered an innocent boy in cold blood and regularly abused your own daughter," he reminded the imprisoned man. "People like you never see heaven." Tamatsu looked down, tears running down his face. After several moments of silence, Tamatsu looked up at his tormentor. "Who are you?" he asked. "Why are you torturing me with this? Wasn't her death enough? Why are you doing this to me?" "I am simply showing you the consequences of your actions," the hooded man said. "You brought this upon yourself," he told the tortured man. "As for who I am..." The man raised his hands up to his hood and pulled it back, revealing his face at last. A face that shocked Tamatsu greatly. "The Yondaime?" he asked. "Oh, so close," the man said, before grinning. "I'm his son." His son? Tamatsu thought. He knew the Sandaime had said that the Kyubi brat was the fourth son, but he was dead. "Still don't recognize me?" the man asked. "Look at my face. Look at the marks there. You know me. The last time we met, you had a knife at my throat and your sword through my torso." Tamatsu looked at the man's face and saw the 3 whisker marks on either side of his face. Adding to what he had said. "No," he whispered, unbelieving, "that's not possible. You're dead. I slit your throat myself," he said, his voice growing louder. "The old fool said you were dead." The man grinned. "I was, but no longer." "Yes, Tamatsu, I am the boy you murdered 4 years ago. I am Naruto Uzumaki. The now revealed Naruto declared. Tamatsu simply stared in bewilderment. No, you can't be. Naruto smirked and lifted up his head, showing his neck. On his neck was a large and ugly scar. The scar from Tamatsu's kunai. Remember this? He asked. Remember when you pinned me to the ground with your katana and droned on and on about your darling wife? Do you remember what you said right before you killed me? This is for my wife, may she finally rest in peace, he said, parroting his words from that night so many years ago. Several moments of pure silence passed as the imprisoned man stared blankly at the blonde Jinchuriki. Suddenly, his blank face became a snarl. He growled and lunged at the blonde, only to be stopped by the shackles that were chaining him to the wall. You! He shouted. How dare you show your face here? You murdered my wife and then used the genjutsu to further torment me? Naruto smirked. It was no genjutsu and, judging from the way you reacted, you know that. Liar! Really? Naruto asked. Consider this. I was in your cell with you when I conjured what you dismiss as a mere genjutsu. Your cell is covered in chakra suppression seals. How could I have used a genjutsu with all those seals in there? Tamatsu continued to glare as Naruto took apart his argument. I don't know how you did it, but I know it was a trick. And as I told you before, your reaction proves you know otherwise, Naruto said. I thought bringing your wife back to talk to you had a chance of changing your mind. Clearly I was mistaken. How the fuck are you still alive? How did you survive? Tamatsu demanded. I didn't, Naruto answered simply. You succeeded in your goal, you killed me. Then how dash? Naruto interrupted him. You killed me before my time. I wasn't supposed to die that day, he explained, so I was given a second chance. After another moment of silence, Naruto spoke again. You know, I really should thank you, he said, confusing the hell out of Tamatsu. My death opened up new possibilities. I was angry at you, but if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be as strong as I am now. So yeah, thanks for that, Naruto said happily. Tamatsu could only yell out in rage while struggling against his bindings. Naruto ignored him. I still have it, you know. Tamatsu stopped struggling. What? He asked. The katana you stabbed me with. I still have it, Naruto elaborated. It came with me when I died and I used it to fight off someone who was eager to see me damned. He then laughed. Ironic, isn't it? You, the man who sought my death more than anyone, gave me the weapon that saved me? Isn't that funny? He asked. Tamatsu struggled even more. Naruto chuckled. Well, it's been fun, but I really do have better things to do today, he said as he turned to leave, before stopping. Oh, one last thing, he said. There is still a chance to see your wife again, a way to be with her when you die. All you have to do is repent. Ask forgiveness for all you've done, to your daughter and to me. Tamatsu snarled. You dare? You want me to forgive you for taking away my reason for living? Never! He shouted. Naruto shrugged. It's your choice. But I would, at least, consider it if I were you. It will mean the difference between eternal peace and eternal damnation, he told the man before crouching down to his level. You see yourself as an avenger. A righteous man who went beyond his duty to do what was right no matter the consequences. But the fact is, you're just a sad, pathetic little man who is going to die in jail, Naruto told him before standing up and walking away. Tamatsu began to shout, this isn't over. When I get out of here, you're dead. You hear me? Dead? I'll slaughter you like veal. I'll rip your heart and spine out. I'll wear your eyes and balls around my neck. Somehow, I doubt that, Naruto said without even turning to look at the enraged prisoner. As Tamatsu continued to shout death threats, Naruto left the isolation wing and found the Sandaime waiting for him. I think you'll find him much more disagreeable with being locked away, he said while smirking. The Sandaime smiled back, so it would seem. Now, shall we head over to your new home? Naruto nodded while pulling up his hood. Lead the way. A few minutes later, the former home of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. Naruto gaped behind his hood at the sight of his new home. It was huge. Filled with enough rooms to house 100 people, a fully stocked library and armory, several training grounds, a pool, and its very own hot springs. This is where my parents lived? He asked, astonished. The Sandaime chuckled at the voice of wonderment from Naruto. Yes. It used to be the Uzumaki clan home, but after they died out, your mother was the only one who lived there. After she and your father got together, he moved in as well, he explained. And all of this is mine? He asked, sincerely hoping this wasn't some kind of joke. It is, the old Kage assured him. It needs a bit of dusting and the fridge needs to be restocked, but it is your home now. Thanks, old man, Naruto said, forcing down the urge to jump up and down while cheering and doing a victory dance. Death taught him better than that, damn it. Naruto approached the front gate and saw no lock on it, yet it was clearly sealed off. How do I get in? He asked. Hiruzen chuckled. It's a blood seal, Naruto, he explained. Only someone of Uzumaki blood or the people they allow can open the gate. Nodding, Naruto bit his thumb and pressed it against the gate. With a quiet hum, the gate opened. Naruto walked inside and noticed the Hokage wasn't following him. "Aren't you coming?" he asked. The Sandaime shook his head. "No, I've put off working long enough, I need to get back to the tower," sadly. "But you go on ahead, enjoy the accommodations," he said as he started to leave, before stopping. "Oh, I almost forgot, I sent messages to all of your friends, telling them to meet up at Ichiraku's in a couple of hours." Naruto was confused. "Why?" "So you can reveal yourself to them, of course." Naruto was worried now, he was hoping for a bit more time. "What the hell, old man? Why did you do that?" "I'm not ready yet," Naruto shouted. Hiruzen grinned. "Stop whining, you'll be fine. Consider it payback for everything you dumped on me today," he said as he left. Naruto watched him leave, grumbling under his breath about the old bastard. The blonde reaper opened the door to the manor, walked inside, and began to look around. As he looked through each room, he discovered what appeared to be a living room, considering all the chairs, the large couch, and the fireplace. As he walked in, he noticed a framed photograph on the coffee table. He picked it up and smiled. It was a picture of his parents, his mother still pregnant with him. Both were smiling at the camera. He sadly realized that this was probably the only picture of the three of them together. "They loved you," Kurama said to him, "more than anything. You know that, right?" Naruto nodded. "I know," he thought to the fox, "I just hope I can make them proud one day." "You already have." "I know you have because, well, I'm proud of you," Kurama told him, while secretly blushing. Naruto's smile grew. "Thank you." After gazing at the photo for a few more moments, he gently set it down. Sighing, Naruto spoke. "Well, let's get this place cleaned up." Naruto formed a familiar, cross-shaped hand sign and summoned a few dozen shadow clones. "All right, you guys," he said, addressing his clones, "get this place cleaned up," he ordered as he walked off. "Where are you going?" one clone asked, wondering why he wasn't helping. "To psych myself up for meeting my friends." Ichiraku's ramen bar, 2 hours later. Naruto was standing outside the entrance to his favorite hangout as a child. His hood was up and he was nervous. He could hear them inside, chatting with one another. "Creator, damn it, Uzumaki, pull yourself together," he mentally ordered himself. "Come on. You can stand up to hell's most depraved and monstrous, fight a pack of werewolves, stop a zombie horde, and handle Reaper training. Why is this so damn difficult?" It was then that Kurama spoke up. "Well, you've been dead for 4 years and you've grown up quite a lot. You're practically a whole different person now. You really hurt them when you died, and you're not helping." Naruto mentally yelled at his partner, earning a laugh from said partner. "I'm kidding. You don't have to be so nervous," the fox told him. "These people have stuck with you for your entire life. They aren't going to abandon you now because you're different. So relax, take a deep breath, and get your ass in there." "Thanks, Mom," Naruto thought, sarcastically, before taking a deep breath. "Fuck it. Roll the dice," he said as he walked in. Inside the bar itself, Ayam, Tuchi, and Irika were talking amongst themselves. "You got the message too?" Ayam asked, seeing as how they were supposed to be closed today. Irika nodded. "Yeah. Hokage-sama said for me to meet him here, that he had something important to tell us." "I'm willing to bet Hinata's been invited too," Tuchi said. "I wonder where she is." "She'll be here," Ayam told her father. "She always shows up when the Hokage asks her to." "Probably hoping it's about Naruto," Irika said, getting sad looks from the father/daughter pair. "You believe him, right?" he asked. "You believe what Hokage-sama said about Naruto coming back, don't you?" "I don't know," Tuchi said honestly. "Don't get me wrong, the Hokage is a good and honest man, but it sounds too good to be true." Ayam nodded in agreement. Irika sighed. "I know what you mean," he said, trailing off. After a few moments of silence, Ayam spoke. It's just not the same without him, is it?" she asked. No, it isn't, sweetheart," Tuchi said. "I'd give anything for him to be here right now," Ayam said, with the others nodding in agreement. "I had no idea," a new voice said. The three looked up and saw a hooded, trench coat wearing stranger walk in. "I'm sorry, sir, we're closed," Tuchi said to the newcomer. The stranger seemed to ignore him. He just stared at them for a moment, before continuing. "I had no idea I was so important to you all," he said as he pulled his hood back. The trio gasped when they saw his face. At first they, like many others, thought it was the Yondaime Hokage, back from the dead, until they saw the whisker marks. But it couldn't be. "And then Naruto?" Irika asked. The blonde smiled. "Yeah, it's really me," he told them. The three of them were stunned. They knew it was impossible, and yet here he was. Suddenly, Ayam leapt over the counter and wrapped her arms around him tightly, crying tears of joy. "Naruto," she said, I can't believe it. You're alive." Naruto returned her embrace. "It's alright, Nei-chan. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, he told her in a comforting voice. After a few long moments, I am pulled away and smiled at the blonde reaper. Wow! You've gotten taller, she said, and more handsome too, she thought to herself, having felt his muscles beneath his shirt. She blushed at this thought and attempted to empty her mind of such thoughts. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Yeah, I've hit a bit of a growth spurt. More than a bit, you look almost nothing like the little shrimp that used to come in here almost every day and eat all of our ramen, Tochi said as he approached Naruto and gave him another hug. After a few seconds, they separated. Damn, it's good to see you, kid, Tochi said. Naruto grinned. You as well, old man. Iruka approached Naruto next and gave him a brotherly hug. I don't even know what to say, he said, honestly, after they separated. Naruto nodded. Yes, I've always wondered what would happen when we met again. It seems words aren't enough. Iruka nodded in agreement. You gave us all a heart attack when we thought you were dead, Ayam said. Don't ever do that again. Naruto grinned. Cross my heart, he vowed. So, where were you all this time? Iruka asked. Naruto's grin became even wider. Oh, it's quite the tale, sensei, he said before looking around. Where's Hinata-chan? He asked, eager to see his closest friend again. She'll be here soon, Iruka told him. I'm sure the Hokage sent a message to her as well, so. The scared Chunin was interrupted by a light gasp. They all turned and saw Hinata Hyuga staring at Naruto with widened eyes. A few minutes earlier, Hinata had been training when a message from the Hokage was delivered to her, telling her to head to Ichiraku's ramen bar in a couple of hours. She was unsure as to why, but she would be there regardless. She liked going to the ramen bar. It reminded her of all the good times she and Naruto shared together. Hinata felt a twinge of pain in her heart at remembering Naruto. She was stronger and more confident now, but she never really got over her crush's death. Naruto had been her light, her guide that had saved her from the darkness of loneliness. She was certain that, if it weren't for him, she would have broken a long time ago. His death had nearly broken her completely. Her light had been snuffed out. The past few years had been the most difficult of her life. Her family, as usual, were unsupportive. Luckily, she had her older sister figure and mentor, Kurenai Yuhi, and her closest friend, Kiba Inuzuka. The friendship between the Hyuga heiress and Inuzuka heir was an odd one, to be sure. He the obnoxious, hot-headed dog lover and she the shy, soft-spoken, cinnamon roll aficionado. But somehow it worked. As it turned out, Kiba had had a crush on Hinata and, when he saw how depressed she was after Naruto's death, decided to try and cheer her up. It took a while, but he finally got through to her and the two were as thick as thieves ever since. Kiba admitted his feelings to Hinata several months after that, but sadly, she did not return them. He had been upset after that, but, after a short time, he got over it and focused on being her friend more than a potential boyfriend. Can't blame me for trying, he had said. Since then, Kiba had not only been her friend, but also her protector from the various unwanted advances from much of village's male population. Oh yes, she had acquired many admirers ever since she became the stunning young woman she was now. Sakura and Ino also had admirers, but they were frightening when they were angry and most men gave them a wide berth after they said no. Hinata, on the other hand, was far too polite to yell at, much less attack, anyone, unless forced, and so her admirers had an easier time with her. Although more than capable of defending herself, it was still nice to have someone she could rely on at her side. Back to the topic at hand, Hinata had vowed to become stronger and become the Hyuga clan head in order to reform and change it from within, starting with the removal and ban of the caged bird seal that had divided her clan. She was well on her way, already being far stronger than her younger sister Hanabi, but she still had a ways to go. Naturally, the Hyuga clan elders were opposed to her being clan head, but she could care less about what they think. She would succeed for Naruto. It was at this time that she had arrived at Ichiraku's and heard talking inside. I hope I'm not late, she thought to herself before stepping inside. And receiving the shock of her life. She saw everyone else was there already, along with someone with familiar spiky blonde hair. She gasped, gaining the attention of everyone. The two teens just stared at each other for several moments, with the others watching quietly, waiting to see how this would turn out. Naruto couldn't help but stare at his longtime friend. Hinata's wardrobe had changed in the last 4 years. Though she still wore a jacket like she used to, this one was a lavender and cream zip-up jacket with lavender cuffs. Underneath that she wore mesh armor. She also wore navy blue pants and black, low-heeled sandals. Her outfit barely registered in his mind. It was everything else that held his attention. Her dark blue hair had grown a great deal since he last saw her, it now flowed down to her waist like a silky waterfall. Her beautiful face with pale eyes that seemed to draw him in, that made him never want to look away. The small amount of her skin that was exposed flawless and smooth. Her jacket hid much of her figure, but Naruto could tell that it was to die for. Naruto's next thought summarized her completely. The old man was right. She's gorgeous. Was this goddess really his oldest friend? It took all of his willpower not to ask the others if he had died again, because of the angel before him. Hinata was too much in shock to take in Naruto's appearance. After another few moments, which seemed like an eternity to the two teens, Hinata took a few hesitant steps forward, until she was standing right in front of him. "And Naruto-kun?" she asked in a quiet voice, but one that sounded like an angel to Naruto, unable to believe what she was seeing. Naruto smiled nervously. Hi Hinata-chan. It's been a while, huh?" Hinata continued to stare, wanting to believe that the love of her life was standing right in front of her but not wanting to get her hopes up. Naruto saw the hesitation in her eyes and knew she wasn't quite believing what she saw. "I know you don't want to get your hopes up," he told her softly, "but I can prove it's me." He took a deep breath and spoke again. "We first met when we were 5 years old. We were both at the playground at the park. I was sitting on the swing set alone and watching the other kids because they wouldn't let me play with them. I was just about to get up and leave when I heard some cry out. I looked up and saw a bunch of kids standing around you. They were taunting and laughing at you and called you a freak, and I saw you struggling not to cry. I was angry, angrier than I had ever been at the villagers who tormented me. When their leader shoved you and knocked you over, something in me snapped, and next thing I know, I'm on top of the kid, beating his face in with my bare fists. Suddenly, a group of A and B are pulling me off of him. I couldn't believe what I had just done, so I ran. I ran until I tripped and landed on my face. I didn't get up, I just laid there, crying. Then I hear a soft voice asking me if I'm alright. I looked up and saw you, kneeling next to me, with concern in your eyes. You were worried about me, after I had nearly killed someone. I thought I was a monster, but you were worried about me." He smiled and then continued. "Without thinking, I got up and hugged you as tightly as I could while crying into your shoulder. I thought you were going to push me away, but you didn't. You hugged me back. After a while, I stopped crying and thanked you. I told you my name and you told me yours. You thanked me for helping you. We talked until it was dark and you had to leave, but you promised that we would meet again the next day, and we did, as well as every day after." Hinata's eyes were widened even more. She had never told anyone that story before. Naruto then placed one of his hands on her shoulder. 3 days after we first met, we made a promise, he told her. We promised we would always be there for each and that we would always be friends, so that neither of us would ever be alone again, Hinata finished. It wasn't a trick. Naruto was alive. Her love had returned. "Naruto-kun," she whispered, her eyes staring to water. Naruto smiled and nodded. "Yes, Hinata-chan, it's really me." She continued to stare until... Smack! Naruto recoiled as Hinata slapped him hard across the face, leaving a red mark. Before he could respond, Hinata threw herself at him and hugged him as tightly as she could. "And Naruto-kun," she said, now crying, "why you're alive? It's really why you," she said as she wept into his chest. Naruto wrapped his arms around her and returned her embrace. "It's okay, Hinata-chan, I'm here. I'm here and I'll never leave you again," he vowed. The two continued to embrace as the others looked on, smiling, while Ayam had happy tears rolling down her cheeks at the reunion. After several minutes, Hinata finally stopped crying and looked up at the boy, no, man she had missed and loved so deeply. "Don't ever scare me like that again," she whispered in an angry tone. Naruto smiled, never, he promised, as the two parted. Hinata finally registered his new appearance and blushed brightly at how even more handsome he had become. He looks so grown up, she thought in surprise. She's so beautiful, he thought, while also blushing. The two continued to stare for a few minutes until they heard someone's throat clear. They turned and saw the others smiling at them, with Ayam being the one who interrupted them. "Do you two need a room somewhere? Or can we ask where you've been, Naruto?" she quipped with a mischievous smirk on her face. The two teens blushed brightly before sitting down at the bar. "Well, it's quite the tale," Naruto said, "best told over a good meal." "Coming right up," Tsuchi said, knowing what Naruto wanted, with Ayam following his lead. When the first bowl of ramen arrived, Naruto began his story. A few hours later. Needless to say, Naruto's friends had been quite shocked at what he had told them. They were skeptical to say the least, but nonetheless, they came to believe him and accept him despite what he had done. They also knew that he held Kurama and didn't care in the slightest. After a few hours talking, it was getting close to midnight, and they were getting tired. They each bid Naruto goodnight, with Iruka saying he'll be expecting both he and Hinata in his classroom tomorrow for the graduation exam, and went their separate ways. Well, except for one. Hinata was all alone with Naruto now, trying to work up the courage to ask him something. "I want to spend more time with him, but what if he says no? Or what if he says yes? Oh, I don't know what to do," she fretted in her mind. Naruto noticed that Hinata looked like she wanted to say something to him. Are you okay? He asked her. Hinata nodded, took a deep breath, and spoke. And Naruto-kun, would you like to take a walk with me? She asked in her trademarked stutter. Naruto had never realized how adorable that stutter was until now. Wait, he thought, is she? For a moment he thought that she was asking him out. Unlikely, she only saw him as a friend, he was certain of that. She probably wants to spend more time with him, making up for the 4 years they lost. He smiled and nodded, sure Hinata-chan, I would love to go for a walk with you. Hinata blushed at his dazzling smile and smiled back as the two began to walk down the street while talking about what had happened in the village since he left. As they spoke, they couldn't help but glance at each other when one wasn't looking. He's so handsome, Hinata thought. She had dreamed of him returning several times since he died, and, when she woke up, she cried, wanting the dreams to be real so badly. But this wasn't a dream, she had covertly pinched herself a couple of times to make sure this was real. She had missed her chance to be with him before, but she wouldn't miss that chance again. Someday soon, she would tell him how she felt, consequences be damned. Naruto, meanwhile, was eyeing her just as much as she was eyeing him. I can't believe that this is Hinata, he thought. She was an absolute goddess, and that was with her heavy jacket on. He was willing to bet she was even more stunning without her jacket and shirt and pants and… Whoa, where the hell did that come from? He thought, wondering on what station did he board this train of thought while ignoring Kurama's laughter in his mind. I mean, sure she's beautiful. The most beautiful woman I've ever known. Stop. Get these ideas out of your head, Uzumaki. It's never going to happen. Why was he even thinking this? The two of them had been friends for years and now he suddenly wanted to ask her out only a few hours after having been reunited? Why would he want to risk her friendship like that? He knew it wasn't going to happen. Why would an angel like her ever want to be with a guy like him? She wants to be with you too, he heard Kurama say in his mind. What? Bullshit, he told the fox. But she does, she's felt this way about you for a long time, I can tell, he told his vessel. Right, Naruto said, unbelieving. Don't believe me? I'll bet you all 9 of my tails that if you were to ask her out right here and right now, she would practically scream yes. And then faint, the fox challenged, knowing the girl well enough from Naruto's memories. We're not talking about this, Naruto growled. He didn't want to risk losing Hinata's friendship by asking her out on the highly unlikely chance she would say yes. Fine, Kurama told him, but if you don't ask her out someday soon, you might lose her. If that happens, you'll regret it for the rest of your life, the fox said before being silent. As long as he's happy, I'm happy, the fox mentally told herself, trying not to feel heartbroken. Naruto-kun? Are you alright? Said Blonde was brought out of his mental argument by Hinata's voice. She had noticed that he was staring ahead, not really focusing on what was in front of him. Nor was he wandering blindly. It was like he was in a trance. Naruto looked at her and smiled. I'm fine, Hinata-chan, just thinking about tomorrow, he lied. Truthfully, he hadn't thought about the exams since after arriving at his parents' estate. Hinata smiled. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, I'm sure we'll both pass, she assured him. I don't doubt it, he told her, still it never hurts to be cautious. Hinata said nothing for a moment, and then began to giggle. Naruto stared at her. What? He asked. Nothing, she answered, it's just funny how different you are. Different? Hinata nodded. You're so serious now, so different from the boy I met so long ago. Hey, I'm not serious all the time, he argued, I can still be funny. A woman and a duck walk into a bar. The bartender says, hey, where'd you get that pig? The woman says it's not a pig, it's a duck. The bartender says, I was talking to the duck. Hinata started laughing despite the joke being bad. Oh, that's horrible, she says. Naruto grinned. Hey, it made you laugh, didn't it? The two friends start laughing again, when Naruto notices something. You have a beautiful laugh, he complimented her before realizing what he just said and froze. Hinata stops laughing and stares at her friend and crush with wide eyes. Did he just say? Hinata wondered. Shit! Why did I say that? Naruto thought, panicking. After a few moments of awkward silence, Hinata finally spoke. Do you really mean that? She asked. Naruto nodded nervously, deciding to be honest. Why yeah, I do. Hinata blushed and smiled. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she told him while doing a victory dance in her mind. Though her laugh was beautiful. It was a victory. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Naruto smiled back, noticing how her blush somehow enhanced her already considerable beauty. You're welcome, Hinata-chan. The two kept walking and talking until Hinata noticed the time. It's getting late, she told him. My father will start to worry. She didn't want to leave his side but knew her father would be upset if she didn't come home. Naruto scoffed when she mentioned her father. Worry? Since when has he ever worried about you? he asked bitterly. Hinata shook her head. Naruto-kun, please don't, she tried to say before he interrupted her. Why not? Since when does he have a right to care? Why should he dash? Naruto, please, Hinata begged him. This used to happen a lot between the two of them. Naruto grew up without the love of a parent or parents and hated and couldn't comprehend the fact that his best friend had not only lost her mother but had an uncaring father as well. He found it intolerable that Hayashi spoke of his eldest daughter like she was a burden and not a blessing. He hated the man, but Hinata didn't like it when he spoke badly of him. Despite all he had done, Hinata still loved her father. Naruto found that commendable but still hated the way Hayashi treated his friend. Okay, Hinata-chan. I'm sorry for upsetting you, he relented, not wanting to hurt her. It's okay, she told him. The two of them stood there for a moment before Hinata once again broke to silence. I should get home, the Hyuga heiress said. Naruto nodded. I understand. Before he could finish, Hinata threw her arms around him. Surprised but joyful, Naruto returned her embrace. Promise you won't leave again? She asked him. Naruto smirked. Promise. The two continued to embrace for several moments before they reluctantly parted. So Naruto began. See you tomorrow? He asked. Hinata smiled. Of course, she replied. Hinata then turned and began to walk home, a large smile covering her face. Naruto watched her leave. Once she rounded a corner and left his sight, he turned and began to walk home, also smiling. He couldn't wait until tomorrow. Suddenly, he felt something lightly hit him in the head before falling to the ground. It was a paper airplane. He unfolded it and saw the seal of the Reaper Corps and a message in the form of 5 words. Get her out of here. Naruto laughed when he realized what was happening. Beatrice, he said to himself, such a troublemaker, he said as if referring to a child. He then used a low-level fire technique to incinerate the message, as was required after reading and memorizing the contents of all Reaper Corps messages, no matter how unimportant, and began walking home. Good thing the backyard is so big, he said to himself as he walked. Creator knows what kind of panic she would cause if people saw her. And so, he headed home, ready to summon his pet and welcome her to her new home. What if Naruto is blessed by Soul Reaper? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.